Welcome to the Thinking Tackle Podcast. Now, if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Now, today I'm joined in the studio by a man who has tread that most fine of lines, and that is catching big carp whilst holding down a full-time job and a family. And some of the venues that he's caught carp from are among the most famous in the UK. So, Lee Kemp, thank you very much for coming in, battling your way across from, I think, the coast today.
Yep, sunny Essex.
Yeah,
Yep.
We were both caught in traffic today, mate. So, and we've since spent probably 2 hours trying to decode your carp fishing album, I suppose, into some form that we can look. And it's fair to say, mate, I guess, that you're not someone who obsesses over having everything in albums.
No, as we found out, it's a bit of a needle in a haystack here and there between everything, really.
I just have to say, with the greatest respect, it's probably the oldest working laptop I've ever seen in my life.
Still going. It's got 5 years in it at least.
You remember, anyone listening, you remember those laptops that were as thick as the dictionary? It was like one of them. So it's very impressive, mate.
Do you think it would pass its MOT, Toad?
Absolutely not.
There's only one key missing off it.
Yeah, one key and the inability to actually click on it.
The clicker didn't work.
That was not good, was it?
But the point being, there's lots of carp on there. But you don't print them out. You don't keep them anywhere. No. We've had stuff off your phone. So getting photographs isn't why you go carp fishing, clearly.
No. We've definitely found that out today. No, it is. It's nice to get in this day and age with digital technology and stuff a good picture, but even that somehow is not always guaranteed.
No. But I think my point is, though, that there's something more to it for you. Like, what is it about the all these venues that we're going to talk about that inspires you to go? Because it clearly isn't about creating an album.
No, it's I'm massively into, like, if that's the fish I want, that particular one, generally of a good age, I would say, that's left out there still. Obviously, a lot of them have perished, and a lot of the fish we might see today have sadly passed as well. But yeah, I kind of like particular ones, the heritage of them. Not all of them again. There is the odd one thrown in there, a little gap filler as when I've had no tickets or whatever and gone for what's available maybe. But yeah, the actual why I do it is, or what drives me to do it and drive all them distances and journeys and battling the M25 or M11 and stuff is, just to try and kind of catch them fish
before they're gone.
It's kind of a race against the clock, as we talked on earlier. They're a dying breed. Obviously, there's always new stuff coming through, which is what sometimes I've probably seem in a bit of a rush to get. Like we said earlier, like, I enjoy it, I love it, but if you've got 5 fish in an album that you'd love to catch, and you've say 2 years per, some go quick, some go longer, until you get your turn as such sometimes. And that's 10 years if I've got 5 fish at 2 years of plot, and then probably not going to be around in 10 years to catch them. So it's
So do you think that you're rushing towards a point because these fish are old, and beyond that point you'll relax, you'll do something different, you'll fish for different carp, or will they still be?
I've thought about it, and it's kind of what's, say, 35 years old now, which is still old, enough and stuff. In 5 years, 6 years time, that will be that much older. So there'll constantly be something, but kind of, I'll probably live in the past with my fish a bit too much, and the old iconic ones, a lot of the books are generated about and things like that are gone. It's, I still think for the next arguably 10 years, 8-10 years, even the ones I'm fishing for now, some of them probably won't, a lot of them won't be around, but I think there will always be something. I don't think I will relax on that kind of note, because I'm just not that way. It is what I do now. I've stopped other things in my life, and sports and football and things like that. Age probably doesn't help me either for that side of it, but I don't think I will slow down.
So how does it fit with, this is the key question, right, for everyone out there listening. We're going to talk about these venues that you've tackled, none of which are easy. How do you fit that into a normal life? Because obviously before you had family, you had other things like your football, etc. Now you've got family.
Yeah.
How does it work?
It's the $1 million question, really.
Yeah.
It's kind of, sometimes I say I don't know, looking back, how I did fit driving, to do an overnighter, drive 130 miles each way, and work and family are always going to be priority. I'll never be late for work due to a capture. I don't think it's ever happened where I had one literally. I mean, it could, because if you're packing up, you're there. You're pushing everything to the last minute. So if you then were to catch one in the last minute, you would technically be late. You can't make up the time on the roads or anything. It's just impossible. But it's. I don't know how I fitted everything in. And honestly, it has happened. Maybe I did have to miss a training game or miss something in football, or. But yeah, with work and family wise, it's always been. Fishing had to come third as such. Work wise now, more, I wouldn't say I work completely for myself now rather than subcontractor.
What is it you do? Sorry.
Just like building and groundworks and stuff.
Okay.
Me and my brother now are a company kind of thing, and it's people say, oh yeah, when you work for yourself you can do more time on the bank, but I think it almost goes the other way, because if I've got a client booked in and I'm due at their house 8 o'clock to do the works, and I can't just be late because it's not professional. It then cocks my brother's up, or my brother, because he can't do, there's only so much you can do in that trade on your own, and then it's going to knock on effect to the next customer. There's nothing worse than trying to ring up a customer that's penciled in for next Monday and say, well, basically you'd have to kind of lie technically, but you don't want to get into that kind of scenario of, can't get you yours on the Monday because I've caught a fish, and
no one would understand either would they? Let's face it.
I don't think even like the family, like my other half, bless her, I don't think they truly understand. I don't think anyone truly understands, apart from an angler, what it is and what it means and what keep you driven. Yeah, it's a very, if you wrote it on paper and said you drive X amount of miles, spend that much diesel, petrol, whatever, walk around the lake in the dark and the rain, sit in a tent, and then catch one eventually and cuddle it, kiss it and throw it back kind of thing. It sounds ludicrous in a way, but unless you do it, it's the same as probably any sport. It's kind of...
Am I right in saying you're doing some work at my old man's at the moment, aren't you?
Yeah, I was there 2 weeks ago. I've just been on holiday, so I kind of...
Well, he would probably understand if you were late, at least.
I don't know, mate. It's Damien we're talking about.
That job did have a few extras, and it did roll into the following week where my brother had to go on his own and sort some stuff out, because it was initially a week, and most jobs always have extras.
Do people chop and change as the job's going?
I've done when we've had stuff.
I think
I
I do when a trade comes around, because I try not to do anything in my house. I generally sub it out. Again, this goes back to the fishing. If I can pay someone to come in my house and do painting or decorating or tiling or things that I wouldn't say I'm a master in, that's not my field as such, but I can do them. Yeah. And I'd just be slower doing it in your own house, so it's spot on. But I would now, for the last kind of 4 or 5 years, I'll pay a trade to come in, or a gardener, because I hate gardeners.
I know people that work a trade, and when it comes to either their own house or a family member's house, the last thing that they want to do is go and do said trade at the house, or it's the last thing they want to do. It's
time. Time is the biggest. Going back to that question, is if I am at home working, doing tiling, say, or the bathroom, if I pay someone to come in there, money, you can earn more money. We all earn more money. You have to put an extra overtime in or do an extra job, whatever. But the time you can't get back. So if I pay someone in to do tiling, I can go to the lake. If, like in the week, if I've finished a job early, this is the other thing I get sometimes more now. Whereas before I was 5 days a week, 7:30 till 4:30, 5:30, or 5 o'clock on site. Whereas now, if I finish a job on a Thursday, and I've got I can go home, see my daughter, see my other half, and then get to the lake that evening, do the night, obviously light levels and stuff. At this time of year, but it's still it's good to be there in the dark. Still
better in some ways, yeah,
because you're not committed to a swim. If you turn up, you can walk around and stuff. But yeah, my daughter's at school in the week, obviously missus at work, so it fits my life better if I can get out in midweek, because then I can spend the family time at home at the weekend, whereas before it was all weekend fishing. And again, I don't know if I did a weekend now, for instance, if I got there on the Friday night after work, Sunday morning I would always leave 10 o'clock latest to get home, take my daughter out to dance, or take her out doing whatever, roller skating, this, that, or the other, or out for lunch, and then out for a roast or whatever Sunday evening. It's you know, and sometimes you kind of, it's almost like bite time, and in some places that first thing in the morning, it seems some of the lakes I've been fishing lately, it's that 10, 11 o'clock. Later, maybe because everyone has gone, because everyone got to 9 o'clock and packed up and went. So you kind of, particular lake in Cambridge I was fishing, between 10 and 12 was, I would say, is the time that seemed to fit my angling for bites. And it was when you had that, the day, all day, that you really benefited from them. And I think one year I did so many, I didn't have the time, like, to stay the days, and I was driving wherever I was working, which could be, it's quite a big area I cover as such, where the work is as such. And I could be driving 80, 100 miles to do an overnighter and go, because that's all I had, because I knew the weekend I had family stuff on. And when you know you're packing up at 5:30, 6:30 in the morning, and you know really your bite time's 9, 10, 11 o'clock, it's, I don't think that year on the overnighters I did, I don't think I caught one doing it. But yeah, there was windows where another angler I knew had caught a few at like 4 or 5s in the morning, with more typical bite times, that like late spring, early summer type thing. So you just keep driven by it could happen, because if you don't, you know deep down it's probably not going to, because you're missing that window. But if you don't go, you ain't going to catch them at all. You can't catch them.
How does it feel when you can't go? Do you get agitated? Is it on your mind? Are you someone can shut it off?
I think I shut it off because I'm busy.
Yeah.
If it was when I'm at home the weekend with the family, luckily my daughter's very active, whether it's sailing, roller skating, just hobbies and stuff that are quite active. You're busy, so you don't allow yourself to think about it. But if it was just sitting around at home, sitting on a tablet or computer or whatever she's on, or my laptop, that could keep her occupied for a while, that would really, that's when I'd probably get frustrated, and it wouldn't be, because it's like a waste of time, I see it as.
Yeah.
And I know kids sometimes do this to chill and do this and that, but she's not one, and we're not one for putting her on a laptop or a tablet or whatever, or sitting in front of YouTube or all day. There's periods that she does it, obviously. But yeah, to answer that question, it's because I'm busy and I don't stop a lot of the time. So if it's not work where you're working and you don't, you know, your phone's going at work sometimes with mates that have got time off or book time off, or just their lifestyle slightly different, so they're out more. And they're buzzing, they're ringing you up, and you get pictures coming through of these fish or whatever, and you're like, you send your well dones and all that kind of thing, have a quick call sometimes to share their buzz, because I think that's important. If they're taking the time to ring you to tell you about a capture, you shouldn't just be like, red button. There is times when I have to, if I'm in the middle of like a big concrete pour or something, I can't just be standing there on the phone talking about a fish. I do remember one very long time ago, a lad was fishing Raysbury, and he caught, I think 2 days, I think it was the year they did away with the close season, and he caught 2 of the ones, like Mary's mate and Malins, 2 or 3 days apart. And I remember exactly where I was on what site, and I do remember stopping everything, and there was 2 guys shouting at me, and I was like, my mate just had Mary's mate or whatever, and he was just like, what? And I was
talking about?
you're like, what are you talking about? You've been drinking or something. But it was, shit. And I always remember, strangely, where I was and everything for them kind of, I mean, that's a big call.
I mean, you do know lads, don't you, to be fair? You count amongst your friends who have that different lifestyle.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they do have. I do have mates that in that different lifestyle.
More.
Yeah. I mean, they've by doing that lifestyle, they've given up a lot of other things, and even at times, it's very rare that I put in that call like on a Sunday morning when it's count on one hand almost, like when you ring up the missus and you're planned to do something, and you're like, it's really going off.
Yeah.
I need to stay.
What's her general response when if you do have to drop that SOS? Like,
I think she's very good in the fact that although she probably understands the actual depths we go to and the desire and the drive, she knows it's important to me. And I think if I was doing it every week, it's like anything, you dilute it and it's that call isn't important or significant because you're doing it all the time. But because it's very limited, she's always just borrowing a little handbag or something like that.
Yeah.
Not quite that much. you try and compensate though. It is on your mind. And
of course, because it's give and take, right? If you've got a family, you can't just absent yourself from that situation.
If it was that, there's times when I've left when it's been, it's on, you're getting liners, they're showing you, they're sheeting on you, and you think, everything's packed up. There's literally rods and buzzers and an out. And again, like we said earlier, if I was to catch then, I would technically be late, but you almost gets to that last minute and you've pushed it and you just have to reel in. And the other lads think you're absolutely bonkers because they know or they can see what's happening sometimes. You just do it. And that kind of, when you've then got a 2-hour drive home, you've got to put some loud music on and just kind of you've got to stop thinking about it because I think you could, if you let it could take over. Yeah. And then the family suffers. But as I say, if I've got to do something on a Sunday and it's with the missus and my daughter and she could take her and then I've got to meet up late or something. But if it was an absolute missus has got something that she wants to do, she wants to go and see her friends because I've been away technically for 2 nights kind of thing. And I've got to have, not got to, but take my daughter or, be a parent. You just have to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think the lads that do more or whatever you want to call it, they've set aside a lot to do that. I think people always forget that he's doing 3 nights, 4 nights. Yeah, but he might not have a missus at home or kids, or if he has, he's probably putting a lot aside, and he might cram his work and do like 16-hour days for 3 days to get them extra 2 days off to.
Yeah, of course. Now, one of the things that is clear from the start here is that you travel a long way for your fishing. You're from Essex, but your fishing has taken you far beyond Essex's borders. Now, I do want to hark back to some of the famous Essex lakes that populate the early part of your fishing, I suppose. Yep. I don't know where it all started. I think what I would like to do, though, is maybe kick it off with a fish and a venue that people probably don't know a right lot about, and that's the match pit. The famous match pit, if you're in Essex, it's been fished by the great and good, hasn't it, of the Essex community. But back when you started, there was a really big and I think really quite a nice mirror in there. Can you tell us a little bit about the sort of where you were with your fishing, what kind of angling you did then, and why you chose that lake?
Just thinking about that actually when we were talking earlier, it is actually a bit of a weird story in the fact that I hadn't really thought about actually, but I started fishing there like early 2001, and it was 20s water, and I've been fishing lakes locally, and there was probably only a couple, and it sounds ridiculous now, but there was some of the waters I was fishing back then and through school and things like that when teenager there was a couple of 20s in there. And if you were to maybe, they've come on in the last 20 odd years, and there's probably multiple, I don't know the stocks of some of them now, but the match pit was a 20s water. I think the biggest the year I fished it was like upper 20s. And I went there and I was catching like 21, 23s. If you had like, I think there was 4 or 5 around there, upper 20 to 28 pound. So that was kind of, for me, it was sounds silly, but a step up, because there was if you caught it, it was probably going to be a 20-pounder, and you're used to catching a couple a year at most between the other 2 or 3 lakes you were flitting around in. But yeah, them fish grew on, and I think I actually properly only fished it for 1 season, where I was living at home at the time, 10 minutes from the door. I was doing shift work before I even got in the kind of building trade and stuff. And yeah, I was kind of getting over there, not loads, but again, regularly. And I had a really good year and caught a lot of them, but up to 20s, really. And it probably was before it's, like you said, like a lot of people did end up going there. It's been in books and blah, blah, blah. But because them fish got big, particularly too, and I think them kind of captures were actually went back on a guest session, like right at the end of December, like that whole between Christmas and New Year, where everyone's getting out, they've all got their new toys, and lakes are generally busy. And it was that kind of, I went back on a guest in, because it was local, you knew everyone there, they're all your local mates, because no one was travelling then really, maybe the odd very select few. And yeah, it was busy, and I ended up going and sitting around the other side from pretty much everyone because it was, I mean, it sounds stupid again, but I wanted to catch one.
And you'd already done the season, and you knew what
it was actually a few seasons prior to it that I fished it properly, and then I went off other lakes locally, we'll probably get onto. But yeah, I went back, knew the lake, although it was probably 3 or 4 years later, went back and just not kept away because you got your rods out, and
you're on a guest for 5 million else.
Yeah, so my guest was right on the other side of the lake. It was
some social then.
Yeah, it was a social, but I think that night there was Chineses and stuff like that turned up. No one really expected a lot to happen, probably because it was late December. And yeah, I think the first night, like evening to night, I think I lost one. There's a few like strong bars, it's littered with mussels, and I think they did actually do some massive work after I went undercutting all the snags, because the mussels, when you got fishing to the margins, people were just getting cut off and they kited left to right, and you've got to bring them back past them almost.
And this was very much this was a match fishing club as well, wasn't it? That weren't necessary. I mean, it's quite interesting that they were doing a work that would benefit carp anglers in a way.
Yeah, I think it is a club, and like the match bit, I think it's postal and telecom kind of thing. But yeah, they've got the other waters in their portfolio are all, there's probably carp in them, but they generally are match fisheries and silvers and tench, perch, and
lots of it in Essex, isn't there? There's lots of these clubs with lots of lakes,
and some of them now are really good carp fisheries because they've just grown on. They've kind of been left alone. A lot of them, to a certain extent, they weren't probably overstocked with carp, so they kind of. And then when the carp anglers, like when I got on there, it was a 20s water, and then I think the next year it did its first 30, and then anglers clock onto it, so there's more bait going in, and yeah, they just pushed, the weights just went through the roof. And I think when I went back, that fish had that mirror. I think because of technology back then, the photos, it was proper film back then, but there was digital technology available, but I didn't have it as a young lad or whatever. And the pictures I've got from the year I fished it, I think I had that big mirror potentially at £23, but my dad would come round in the morning if there was no one about, because it was quite quiet when I fished it that year, when there was a 20s war, and he'd walk the dog round it, which probably, this was before it was hot fenced, it was just a bit of a free fall, there's always dog walkers about from the village. He'd walk my family dog round there and do the pictures, and bless him, it's kind of like there's a lot of grass and
stood up properly as well, looking down at you.
It was.
This is the second. This is when he went back.
That's the guesty, that's. But yeah, as you can see there, I mean, that's probably. It might be a bit cropped, obviously, because it's tail and that's cut off. The picture, that is a
picture of a picture,
scanned in picture. Yeah, someone my mate did years ago, because it was all like proper film.
I always remember
photography.
Again, I always remember Joe Morgan's pictures of that fish. I think maybe did he get maybe at night, because it did get quite big in the end, didn't it? That fish.
Yeah, I think did. That was as big as it ever went when I caught that.
Yeah.
That was like as big as
It's
it
top
got.
weight. What happened on the trip then on the session? So you've gone around the far side.
Yeah, I went around the far side, and there was actually a bailiff type man, and you know what bailiffs are like. They kind of, that's it in the upper right. That one there, isn't it? Is that it?
I don't know, mate.
I'm pretty sure
Definitely
that's
not.
it. No,
Somewhere I've been once or twice.
no, Essex is the workings.
It's
It's
yeah,
Wivenhoe.
It is Wivenhoe. Yeah, this is where. Yeah.
Yeah, that's got to be it. Yeah, the little island, the big. No, that is it. I'm sure it is.
That's
Spin
Top
it.
One Tobes, yeah.
That one there, yeah. So I was. So if you move the cursor to the left side, there's a big bald patch in the grass. That's probably where my ground shoe was now.
As if you just said that.
No, because if I didn't, someone would pull me up on it. But if you go, so right,
slightly right toe. So that big white bit, mate.
Oh, here.
There, yeah.
and then go forward towards the lakeside. It's called the beach. It was always called the beach swim. So there's a little dot island on the other side. Everyone was mainly along that bank.
Yeah.
And along the road bank, which is where the gravel workings, as you can see, like there. That's it. And I went around there. There was one bailiff type chap who I got in right with him, but I think a lot of people.
Well, he's a bailiff, isn't he? Let's
Yeah,
face it.
yeah.
With all due respect to bailiffs out there, club bailiffs particularly are interesting characters usually.
Yes, he's an interesting guy. I say he's sound as such, but he's yeah. So I went in there, and there's off that island. There's kind of a gravel kind of bar and that runs out into the lake. And I was just fishing in the deeps leading up to it.
What kind of angling were you doing then? Because I've got in my head what I've been told is the sort of fishing that you do now. Would I recognise your fishing then? 20 years ago, whatever it is.
No, it'd been probably we can afford and we get bits and pieces and stuff like that, and it's different now because everything's so readily available as well, kind of thing. But rig wise would have been massively different. I know kind of what rigs I'd have been using, but that actual session again, I'll never forget it. It was so this is talking about the 29th, 30th of December. It was a mild winter. I'd like to say,
and we now often get these little clusters of low pressures come in around Christmas, don't we?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean it was just a mild winter. It was 2006. It was that winter, and it was mild. Admittedly, there was other fish getting caught around the country in January and things like that as well, because it was all mags back then, and I was massively into my mags. Still got them all now, but it would have been. That session was all on singles and the old famous tooties.
Toots? What, Richworth toots or making your own? Or...
They probably weren't Richworth toots because they were just single pop-ups, and I think they were probably a mainline one, potentially.
Well, we are in Essex after all.
Exactly, yeah. They were a mainline one that were probably heavily glugged. I remember there's been various lads that have got the so-called original type tootie, and I've actually got some pop-ups at home at the moment.
They should really if you take a deep
cough.
Sniff, you should
These ones actually, then a chap that does hook baits sent me the other year, and he can't roll them because of his health issues and stuff like that, and he said, I've got some, they're old, but I've got some, and he said they're a bit, because they were on cork balls, he said they're a bit cracked and stuff, and I did actually say, I'll just send them, you can't use them, and you open the tub and you do cough.
Yeah,
it makes you, and it gets on the back of your phone, it like clings on.
Yeah,
and I've got them at home, and I used them. I've probably had them for about 2 or 3 years now, and I used them one night on a Cambridge venue the other 2 or 3 years ago, and he'd warned me about them, and they were cracked and they had dried out because they were old, but they were still potent. And I should have, thinking about it, I should have meshed them in some way, whether it's tights, this, that, or the other products that are out today. And I didn't. And the next morning I brought them in, I had 3 corkball pop-ups off the lead. And it's and like a few lads were like, oh, they're crap. And I was like, I was warned they were old. He was doing me a favour. And I've still got them. And I think if I ever do use them, which I probably will, because they are the real deal ones, I think. And there's only a tub of them, you know, and it's generally single hook bait fishing.
So those sort of real acidy sort of notes were what you were looking for, even the winter back then.
Yeah. And I say I had some. They were probably mainline. I can't remember exactly, but probably mainline tooties, because that's what was available. And they were glugged from a mate's thing, probably a year before again. You just kind of kept swishing them around.
Yeah,
They were just
quite-
in proper
quite right.
boilie pots and
Yeah,
nothing
yeah.
like what you can get again today to keep them rolling round and more even. And yeah, I was fishing singles out on the limit of my water, I'd say, to be quite honest. And because there was lads opposite, again, you're all mates. It's a social. But I think I lost one the first night, a hook pull. I remember it was definitely a hook pull. I think it had gone over the bar, and I think I was pulling it back or something like that. It was in the dark, and it pulled quite soon into the fight. And then, yeah, the next day they were out there again. There wasn't a lot happening. It's not one of these, like one of these amazing stories where they were showing, they were sheeting on me, blah blah blah. They were just out there in the zones I knew of, slightly down off the shut, because it's about 2 foot against the island if you're up hard to it. And I was fishing, I'm sure it was like 11, 12 foot off of it. And yeah, the next day I had the bite, and again, it's so long ago, but I do remember certain things of it, and it just literally, it was known, it's probably a male fish. It was quite a solid framed, hard fish. I think other people have caught it and wrote about it and said it was absolute animal, took them around the island and all this kind of thing. And it just, I don't know where it was going, because it was like it was trying to get out the lake the other side. It just went and went, and I was thinking, there's nothing out there apart from this bar, but it's going to wipe people out opposite soon. And it must have, it sounds bad, but it must have took 60 yards. It was just absolutely...
Which is rare. You look back across your whole carp fishing career now and think, can't be many that have done that to you.
No, I mean, there's certain situations where you can't let them because of the environment, the snags or whatever. But there was nothing... Maybe in hindsight, if it had kept going and kited right, it'd have gone around the island thinking about it. But you almost like you didn't want to clamp down. It was like frightening how quick it was going away. And then I just straight away. I remember the lads opposite seeing me like hooked into one, and a few of them have walked round. Obviously reeled in first. But yeah, they've walked round and...
They definitely didn't.
No, they definitely didn't. They definitely didn't. They've walked round, and I remember one of them walking into the swim, and it's quite open at the back, as we see. It's like it's not now. There's not a fence, and it's quite... It's just 20 years ago. And he walked in, he was laughing and joking, but being quite loud with it. And I don't know why, because I'm not normally like it, but I was just like, just shut up, it's the big one. I don't know why, but like you say, there's not many fish that could have done that. And I think probably mid-30s was probably my biggest fish before then, kind of thing. I was local, and there just wasn't...
Still a big fish for that
Yeah,
for the
yeah,
day, isn't it?
yeah. I mean, it's still, if you catch a 35 pounder now, it's still...
Yeah.
Obviously, a lot of them now you catch fish for. If you catch a 35, it's probably still an old one and a nice one. But yeah, and I just played it in. I don't think the initial run was the one that was kind of like, and it felt heavy. But by this stage, there was other 30s and that in the water. And yeah, I remember it coming in. There was quite a group of people. I think it was like the 29th of December. I think it was reported as like on the last, what it was in Carp Talk kind of thing. That's what you did back then. You sent them into Carp Talk and stuff, and it was reported as the last 40 that year. That was their say, so I don't know, some people did never put them in there. But and yeah, so I caught that one. It was 44 something.
I mean, that is ridiculous growth.
Yeah,
Bear in mind you caught it 23 potentially.
I'm pretty sure it was, because the photos were so...
Is it that one? Yeah. Is that
yeah. So look at the grainy, dodgy photos that... Again,
well, I mean, yeah, we're going back a way.
You can still see it, kind of thing. It's just a solid...
You've got some solid, what would now be described as kind of like face recognition going on there, haven't we? Like the fish is soft, the face is sharp.
I mean, it must have flapped and hit me in the head, because it looks like there's all scum over the hat looking at it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it was just solid. You can see it's kind of... Yeah, and it just had one big scale.
Did it have a name, that fish? Like, did it have just the big one, match bit bigger?
It was called the big one. I think later on, there was a few people that wrote about it. I think they called it the male.
Yeah, right.
Referring to it.
Shows the other side again, Tobes, because that's the kind of more recognisable side with the big single scale. But yeah, I remember, like I say, I remember seeing the Joe Morgan pictures of it, I think, for some reason. I didn't know anything about the fish at the time. It was obviously a fish that within Essex was known, but not necessarily elsewhere.
I think, I'm trying to think now, had it done... I think it had done 40 pounds. That was a big deal, like 2000 and... We'll say that's 2006. And I say it's quite, with that big single scale, it's quite recognisable.
Big sort of orangey vibes.
Yeah, I think Joe Morgan's pictures think about them. I think it was quite orangey and even
very
red,
orangey.
I think. For
yeah,
some reason.
yeah. His was probably a late capture again, like an autumn or a winter.
It was a night or evening shot, wasn't it? I think it was dark, wasn't it? I think in the pictures.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
But yeah, so there was that one, and then there was a big common in the lake.
But let's just linger over the significance of this for a second though. £44 is a massive jump, isn't it?
Yeah, and compared to what I was used to, it was 44.10. I
big
do know
44s, you know, big 44s as well.
I think it had done £40 before, but that was definitely the biggest weight to date of it. And I mean, looking at it, you can see why it did charge off.
It's a big frame. You sort of can't. I always find with the fish that have got a frame like that, it's tough to take in the size of it because it's kind of well proportioned.
Yeah,
it's long.
Yeah, it's probably quite wide as well. I mean, you can catch a 44-pounder that's a lot deeper, and they just you're looking at a flat photo, they look a lot bigger, whereas it doesn't look.
Do you remember what that felt like? Because obviously you've got a lot of mates around there. You've become the centre of attention with what is a ginormous carp, frankly, backed by the standards of 06. Nationally, sort of big, I'd say. Even then,
potentially, for going back
certainly in December.
Yeah, it was. I've not been allowed on many guest sessions since. The story will continue. I've been on one really other good one down in Reading Way, but it's another story. But I was trying to get I don't get allowed on guesties much these days.
But in terms, did it feel like a different level to you, or was it quite run of the mill?
No, it was definitely. It was. I think you will always remember your first 20, your first 30, your first 40. They jump up massively. And then when you've only seen, I'm trying to think, probably 2006. So I would have seen a few 40-pounders on people's mats, not mine obviously, but by that time, I'd seen a few 40-pounders.
And keen to get involved yourself. Clearly.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it
was. But then you dropped the ticket, so it wasn't like you were actually fishing for this one.
No, because I've always been catch them once. If you carry on for things, I don't like repeats. None of us. Some people do. Some people are just happy to catch, which is great because it's each of their own. But I don't. If I'm fishing for a target or whatever the word is, I'm there for that one. The others are all great. And you learn more of the others, and they're great. But once you catch that one, I am gone. And also,
even at £23 though, you were.
I think because I'd had such a good year on there, and that wasn't actually the biggest fish in the lake at the time. It was kind of a 23, and they were doing £28. There was 4 or 5, and I'd caught them 4 or 5 that did £28. So I hadn't got every carp in the lake, but I'd had a really successful year of 20-pounders up to 28. So I was kind of like. If you go back the following year, you'd caught the ones that you knew of were the big ones. And then if I was to go back, the way I see it now is you'll take, whether it's a stock like that or a particular one, if you're catching them again, because they're bigger, you are, in my opinion, you're taking someone else's that's putting they've never been there before and they're there to catch that fish or that fish. And all I would be doing was pretty much catch and repeats, just at bigger weights, which I kind of did in that, but it was a guest session.
Yeah, of course.
Like a free
we'll
night.
Let you off that one. The other big one in there that only died a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Was the fish, a common called the Warrior.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go.
Tell us the story of this. This looks like the same period though somehow.
Same trip.
Oh right.
Next day.
So you've had the 2 big ones in on the guest trip,
and the fully scaled. I had the mirror common fully scaled. It was just you just couldn't ride.
Carry on then. Sorry,
it was So I went back for that one guest session, lost one, caught the mirror we just talked about, and then I think some of the lads were getting a bit, you're taking the mick kind of thing, and then the next day, say daylight, for some reason like mid morning I think it was. You can see all the vans and the people in the background. It's not a particularly big lake, and I had another bite, and it wasn't as mind blowing as the one before, but it still rucked hard, and no one came round. You can see in the back of there. You can see it. There's two people in the back. I think they're obviously packing up or something. One of them's a good mate actually, and he was on a guest as well. Actually.
If I'll be honest, they look like they're sat there with the mate watching you return this fish.
Probably are actually, but yeah, they were all good guys. But so I had the bite, and it was literally the lot that were on there. If there was 9 of us on the lake, we all knew each other, and I was playing it in, and someone shouted across something, and I was like, "It's another good one," kind of thing. And there wasn't thinking about it back then. There was this one here, which there is 35.10. The big one at 44, obviously. I don't know if there might have been a few other 30s, like 32 pounders, but there still wasn't like what it became to be kind of thing. There still wasn't like 15, 20, 30 pounders. And you never know if you lose a fish. We've all been there and you lose it. You know, it's the big one, this, that, or that. But again, it was staying deep. It was rucking fairly hard. And yeah, no one had come round. And then I remember netting it, and there was still no one with me. They were all watching from the other side. And I shouted out across, someone said out, "What is it?" And I went, "It's the Warrior." And they were like, yeah, there was a few chosen words back across the lake, but not believing me. And I was like, it's in the net, and still no one's reacting. And I was like, is no one coming round? Like shouting across the lake, because I say we were all friends, and there was no one outside of our little group or whatever. And they were like, "What?" And I was like, "It's the Warrior." And they were like, "You're laughing, you?" And I was like, "No, seriously, is someone coming round to give me a hand with weighing and photographing this fish?" But it was big. Again, that would have been I think that'd have been a PB common, but it was the biggest the common had ever gone, and the biggest the mirror had ever gone in the lake. And then I think on the next, maybe late that I had 5 takes in the end of that trip. And I think
all slashing tooties to the island.
Not to the island, I say, because the
Just
island
off,
was
10 foot,
off.
10 foot.
The bar went out and then almost disappeared. And then I was.
Why do you think? Do you think it's a simple case of they were super localised, or were they finding you? Like, how did that work?
You're never gonna know, but I mean, them tooties, they're probably smelling from the other end of the lake. It's only like 6, 7, 8, 5, 6, 7 acres, whatever the lake is. It's an area where they were in the winter when I fished it. It's a good area. It's just a good area at all the time. You've got the deeps and the shallows. You've got the island. It's also when you push them boundaries, like if the lake's, say now we always talk wraps, if it's 32 wraps across, you don't both fish 16 wraps because you're on top of each other. So although it looks like opposite someone's in your swim, you always give it 14 and a half. So there's that zone that's kind of
never touched.
No, because you don't want to be fishing right
Busted
against
up,
someone.
Yeah.
But if the person opposite's fishing, say 12 wraps or 13 wraps, if you fish the 16 or clip it up at 16 and a bit and bit of swing, you're out there on that zone that's kind of, I mean, looking at that, it's a long time.
This is saying 276 meters.
Oh, that's the length of the lake,
length,
though.
yeah.
I mean, that's, if you were to swing round to that bald patch of grass and then go to like to the corner. I mean, we didn't do rap sticks back then, but this was just an example. If you go to the corner of it,
go to the island, Topes. Go to the island. Yeah.
If you go, keep going down a bit.
Left a bit.
So that's almost like that point there is where the
middle bar. That's the contested zone.
Yeah, that's
80 meters.
80 meters, is it? Yeah, I mean, it's been a long time. And what's 80 meters though in raps?
I don't know, because I don't even know. I don't. As a yard shorter than a metre or longer. You're a builder. You should
yeah,
know
well, it's 900 and so it's 3 foot, but yeah, we don't. It's weird how we weigh fish in pounds, but and things like that, and metric to.
But the point being, there's a contested zone in the middle.
Yeah, like, and if you're there first and you put a marker out there, rightly or wrongly, you kind of like you'll assert your dominance on that.
Yeah, you're kind of push someone back a little bit.
Yeah, but maybe. I think the lads opposite that day, I think probably didn't care anyway because they were mates.
They've got a little dot to contend with as well, haven't they? To be fair, so probably a little hairier for them to fish long.
Some of the swims, there's a swim to the right of the island again, the bottom island, where it's again the
sort of more open one.
Yeah.
That's who you were facing. Really,
I'm pretty sure that was the swimming. I think it did change a bit as well. Like there was a few rules, but what's that? So
That's 75.
So it's his water, really. You've got.
Yeah, pretty much. But it was the beat. Yep, definitely. Yeah, that's right. I've been rumbled. So bloody Google Maps. Yeah, you've gone back to swim a little bit. Yeah. So yeah.
No, he has. Look, he sold you short.
Yeah, he's mugging me out here. But yeah, so that is the contested bit. It might be slightly up, I think, actually.
Yeah.
But the beach was always the one that dominated the corner of the island.
Yeah. See, that's the thing. Culturally, it might before all of this tech.
Yeah.
No one knew anyway. So it was the beach fishes that bit, even though it's further in the end.
Yeah, well, it's just been proven.
Yeah.
That.
But just to go back to the warrior, because that is a fish that. Got a lot bigger, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean that ended up again. It was on my doorstep. Like even now, it's not far. And I've only moved locally-ish into Colchester and out of Colchester and things like that. But I've always said it because I'm always worried of missing out on the next one, and you're never going to catch them all, and they're dying at a rate that you can. The old ones quicker than you can ever catch them. There's not many that went through all of them unless you were full time or
Yes,
exceptionally good or whatever. That one it went £50. I don't know what year, probably
2 or 3 years ago, maybe, was it?
Maybe
4.
Maybe a few years longer, I think. And that was quite a rare
It's
one.
still in mega condition then.
There's on the other side, I don't think we had it on there, it's called the Warrior. There's like a swirl of scales in the common scales that are like smudged or disfigured as such, I think is why it was called the Warrior. I don't know. I've heard stories about how it got it, but
Club Lake stories.
Yeah, kind of thing, and when it was stocked and all this and stuff. But it's probably there was that and one other ended up like in Snakepit actually that they went a lot bigger, and I caught at low 20s, and you kind of almost think, do I go against everything I've always said? And it's winter and it's local and I'm still driving to hard pits 100 miles, 80 miles away, and you think, should I just make it a bit easier for myself for this winter? And I don't generally. But yeah, that one did cross my mind almost when it's on your doorstep. But then at 35,
you had it big. You did the right thing. It's big there, isn't it? 35's a real...
Yeah, I did actually go over there and witness it once at Fish because it was so local. And there was obviously some lads on there that I knew, and probably my oldest fishing mate that he got me. I float fished and all that. My dad wasn't an angler, but he took me and my brothers fishing, and then probably stopped a bit and did football and stuff, like going into early teens. And then I was going down the local lakes with my mate in like the 6-week holidays. They were all down. There was 2 or 3 of them that fished, and I was just going down there camping. And then they were like, why don't you get some rods and stuff? And this was fishing for doubles kind of thing with the maybe 120 and 220s in the lake. And then just got into it. But he still fishes, James, basically. And he caught it at £50 too, I think. And I always said to him, because I've known him since I was 4 years old. And he's kind of been in and out of fishing. He's got a bigger family, I'd say, and other choices that he's made. He's not always... He's a good angler. He'll catch it. If he did the time that I or other mates did and was like, yeah, he'd be...
Right up there, yeah.
He's got a knack of catching them. The amount of times he'd pop round mine, and when I was living at my mum's, or even after, he'd kind of... My bait freeze was at my mum's, and he'd pop round. I'd say, yeah, just help yourself to bait, or give my mum the money kind of thing for it. And he wouldn't, and he'd take the bait, and he caught, I think that match pit mirror... borrowing bait. He caught one out of Suffolk Water Park, a really old one. I think it was called the grey or the slate grey, on some borrowed bait kind of thing. And yeah, he had that Warrior, and it was £50 too. And it was one that I'd thought about almost crossing my morals as such and going back for, because it was so 5-minute local, and there's not that much local to me really. Now that I've moved right onto the coast. But yeah, it was nice to see him with it and see it again. I don't know, what year was that? It must have been... It's probably 4 or 5 years ago. It might be longer. But yeah, I went over and see it with him at £50 too, £50 4 or whatever. Same fish, and it was... I knew then it wasn't... I was never going to go back for it.
Okay.
I think it went on a couple of years after that. I think they... Because it was quite a rare... It was like once a year fish. That
granite, wasn't it?
It was once
very
a year.
predictable sort of windows.
yeah, I think there's a lot into that, moon phases and windows and dates. I think with that Warrior, the club, because their main income was probably from carp anglers now.
By that stage, yeah.
Yeah, it was because it was a big... People were travelling to fish it, so it was on the map kind of thing. And they listened, I think, to the carp anglers a bit more with all regarding the snags and undercutting them and the mussel situation. And they ended up taking the close season away. That fish was generally once a year fish, and they took the close season, the traditional almost season. I don't think it was proper traditional, but that kind of May it was shut till mid-June, I think, maybe. And they took it away and brought it in when they spawned. When people see them spawn, they'd shut it for 6 weeks, which, I don't know, is probably the right thing to do. I mean, everyone's got their own opinion.
I think so, yeah.
I think so, but it was only a small lake, so it's not as if it's like a massive lake. They could just shut the air and they were spawning, and there's other pods of carp around. But yeah, after that, I think you could fish it in May. I think the first few years they opened it up, and it wasn't just the first year, it was the first 2 or 3. I think it did day-to-day, back-to-back days once. It got caught off the top in the evening and got caught off the bottom the next morning.
For a very difficult carp to have that happen, it's pretty stark, isn't it?
As much as they're not...
Was it May and October, the dates that used to come out?
Yeah. I think you know someone well. Yeah. It's probably after it. Probably heard his... Well, he wasn't at work them months, I should say. Months, not days with him. But yeah, it's... it was very... I think a lot... Not all of them, but some of them can be... If you've got less time and you do your work on them, you can tune into them zones where
I think I definitely want to talk to you about how you fine tune your campaigns when they're, let's say, a little further from home, but we'll come on to that, because I do want to talk about another big Essex common first. Probably the most famous Essex lake ever, I think, certainly nationally anyway, and that's Snake Pit. What were your early memories of that rather unique lake? Because I've never seen another lake like it.
No, it's it is. It's. I think a lot of people. I've always liked the rawness of lakes and the more the natural rather than the primes.
And this has always been raw, hasn't it? From the word go, the children's home next door and the litter, the road right next to it.
I mean, a lot of lakes
and stuff.
If you turned up there's kind of like. Again, it's probably it's different now, and it was probably different in the era before me as well. But I knew it for what it was then, and there was like fridges because it was the gate was never always locked. It was a club water again,
right on a bend, isn't it, on the road? Or something.
Yeah, like little lay-by, and there was always kind of things going on there. I had
builders, mate. You know what I mean?
Terrible bastards. There was fly tipping, and there was like the kids' home behind some of the swims, which. Again, they were never a problem. I had one memory where I had a bit of a to-do with the carers because a young lad I've never smoked, and when I'm fishing I don't drink. It's very rare unless you're celebrating someone's capture, or whatever. But yeah, if I go out nice clubs, bars, don't now so much, but go out that kind of dressed up, or I go fishing, live like a tramp and try and catch carp kind of thing. There's no mix over. The friends don't mix over and they can't understand it. But anyway, they're one of the carers had come round. No, so when the kids had come round, and they often used to try and ponce fags and stuff off you, and they knew now that I didn't smoke, didn't drink. And he come round, and I remember his name was Sean kind of thing, and he sat in the swim just chatting to me, just like he probably shouldn't have been there. He should have been in the home, but he'd walked over and he sat with me, and then the carers came round. He climbed up a tree in the swim, and I'm fishing like in the edge, and they were screaming at him about is that Snake Pit? Yeah, sorry, I was just in a picture. It's weird.
I think
it is. I'm just looking at things thinking, is that it? And it is, obviously. I don't often look at them from like aerial
Would this be these houses to the right? Was the kids' home, or is it? I don't know if it's still going or not. But
I think where the cursor is now is the fields, and that like house with a big greyish looking like tiled roof.
That's the bend you're on about.
That's the lay-by,
Yeah,
it must be there because it's the hole in the wall swim. I was just thinking. So there's a little bungalow on the corner that's still there. That's right where the deepest part of the snags are. to the right.
Can't actually
corner.
see the snags in the
No,
aerial
it's
shot.
quite weird. I mean, is this a current, obviously, shot?
Yeah, maybe they're gone, mate. Maybe they're taking them out.
Oh, they're still there. I mean, I'll pop over.
Do you?
Yeah.
But snags do decay.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
I mean, in a fairly short time as well. So 15 years would be.
Yeah, I'd say, yeah. I mean, look, we've all seen the like of your dad's pictures kind of thing back in the day, which was like 90s, and they were savage. But then when I went on there was like the top, the where the bend is, that corner there was very snaggy, like sticking out, protruding out the water, and then the corner to the right where the first.
I remember the right hand corner being.
That was the main snag.
A couple of times I've been there. Yeah.
That was there's actually a rope going round them now, so you can't technically fish around them. And then in the bay, down to the bottom, there's that point that goes out.
Yeah.
I mean, that looks like you can see that it's weed or what, but to the right of there in the water, there's a line of snags that used to protrude out of there as well.
Okay.
But yeah, it wasn't like it's only getting better. I think they've removed some as well. The club, I think they had divers in there once, but yeah, back from when the 90s, it was savage. Some of the pictures I see, it was literally like an orchard, like forest kind of thing. And then when I fished, it was bad. I mean, and then it's probably not as bad now. But
talk to us about the fish that attracted you to this lake, because obviously we should point out that the original Snakepit Common long gone at that point.
Yeah, that was there was only like 3 fish or whatever, it was 5 was it originally quoted, and then 3 main ones. They were gone. So I fished the match pit. So it was, I think it was 2001, 2002 maybe, the match pit, and then I'd caught the ones I'd wanted out of there, as big as they were, and then I went on to Snake Pit the following year. It must have been. I can't think if there was any gap, because it was basically Dippy, the Wandering Mirror, whatever it was called, was put in the lake. I think it went in 1999. I think it got moved that winter.
Right. Out of the River Gipping.
Yep.
And is the Gipping somewhere near here? Or did
No,
they drive it in from
drive
Ipswich way? Is it? I think.
The Gippings runs through Suffolk, like Ipswich
yeah.
and stuff. Yeah, and I think that fish had, it was called the Wandering Mirror. It was a lovely carp. It's one I really, it's not regret. I tried to fish for it, and my timing was out with it. It died 3 months after I started, so it must have been the 2003 season. 'Cause I'm pretty sure it died in the summer of 2003. Okay.
By which stage did you had this sort of Dippy had attracted some really, really good anglers, hadn't it? Terry being amongst them.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's after catching the match pit mirror. Oh no, sorry, no, it'd been before then, wouldn't it? So after fishing there, this was like the next step up, and you knew there was a big one in there. Yeah, this was before the match pit when I went on there. Actually went back and caught it big kind of thing. And Dippy was in there, and I remember walking. We cycled over there. That was probably one of my biggest, I don't know what the word is, not downfalls, but not driving straight away. So I used to cycle everywhere, like just miles. I actually went out yesterday to pick up my van after a night out, and I cycled 12 miles, and I just don't know how I'm walking today, to be fair. In a headwind with flat tyres is not the one after a night out. But anyway, we cycled over there, me and my friend, and we went in down the track. Probably weren't really meant to. I think it was because there was a syndicate on it, and then Caps, like local angling club, took it over. I think it was in that kind of, I don't know if it was the syndicate or the Caps, but we went in there and we walked down the first track.
Did it run down here?
No, sorry, straight down there. And we got to, if you move the cursor up a little bit.
So halfway along that bank.
Maybe a bit further up. There's the first swim anyway, it's called the double. It's probably there, I reckon. And it's quite a high bank behind the swims. And I'll never forget it. We'd not seen many, 2003, me and my friend, like, big fish, and Dippy was a big framed old, like grey, it was an upper 40. I think it did 49 once in there, but I think it went in about mid 40, I'd like to say, but I might be right, but it did 49 pound, I think, in the Snake Pit. And we'd only been there minutes, and we stood there, and about 20-30 yards out, this absolute whale and it was Dippy. It couldn't have been anything else, but we hadn't seen anything, and it was I'll never forget it. It was probably a foot below the surface, and it on its own, and it just swam like parallel with the margin, like 20-30 yards out, and we're just like, we're on a high bank, water's clear, and we're like, that's dippy. That's the one that everyone's travelling for. You know, it got caught a fair bit, I think.
Am I right in saying, please correct me if I'm wrong, but my dad told me when I was like, I remember going around here quite a lot actually, and he told me when I was younger it was called dippy because it came out all the time.
Yeah, but
and I remember as a kid thinking that was hilarious.
So maybe what was it? Suffolk Water Park fish got moved into the Gipping, and then from the Gipping to here.
I think it was more to it that. I think there was rumours of the
ICI
pit.
Yeah,
in Suffolk. And I think even when it was in the river, there was areas it was moved through locks that it probably couldn't have got to unless it was moved, unless the flood. I don't know the exact.
Interacted with humans a lot. This carp.
So
it was a fantastic fish.
Yeah, it's one that. Yeah, we should have a picture of it. So I did see it once.
Go on, Tobes, find us one.
Yeah, there's lots of.
If the name is true, there should be plenty.
So
you'll find.
You were going to fish there for dippy. Or you were going to fish there?
Yep. So
and Dippy was in there.
Yeah. So I went on there. We see it straight away on our first night of recce before we even had tickets, and then I don't know. My mate got a ticket, so I bought a ticket. And so I wasn't even driving, I don't think. And my dad, bless him, he took me everywhere. Whether it was football or fishing, he would drive me there, drop me off. Whether it was it was probably weekends then. And it isn't that far. It's probably like 15 miles at most from my house where my parents lived at the time. And yeah, you almost felt like, it's a thing I had years ago, you almost like thought you had to almost build a CV up for like stepping stones. You catch a double.
Well, I mean, that was the narrative. It is much more.
Now there's so many big fish about, and people.
I think that people couldn't question it as much now.
No,
you don't have to have that, and it was built into carp fishing. Even like the BCSG, which we might come on to. You know, you had to be vetted into a certain scene.
Yeah.
And that's the background to your fishing, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And it just going there knowing there was a 40-odd pound or mid 40 pounder. A famous, whatever you want to call it, one, not a known one.
Do you remember seeing any known anglers there? Jim Shelley probably fished.
Shelley fished it before it
and after,
but then he went back
for the common
after I had that. I remember actually speaking to him about it, kind of thing, because I knew him from somewhere else, and I think he then went back on there because I ended up spending a lot of time on snake, probably more than I've ever fished any other water, like through the years, being very unlucky with it, losing it a couple of times.
You lost dippy?
No, sorry, the common. Sorry,
common, yeah.
The dippy. I see it quite a few times in the snags. It was a very good lake for. You could go there. You didn't have to bait in the snags, which I hate people doing anyway, because it just kept them in there. And it's not like a snag bush. It's like
no, you couldn't
half an acre of trees. Submerged trees. And you'd often see most of the stock in the snags quickly, but yeah, you'd see that a lot. And the common, Mark II common as such, what I'm going to call it, was probably mid 30 at the time.
So big common.
Still a really big fish, yeah. But it was dippy. Everyone was there.
And the cast of characters around those fish, my memory was you had a real hodgepodge of mirrors and smaller.
Yeah.
A lot of 20-pounders.
I think some of them got moved by the people that moved dippy, and I'm not saying they were selected, but what they created, the same as any lake back in the 80s and stuff, whatever, fish were moved that then they made that little family and stock of carp, which then went on for like 30 years being, and that's kind of... I remember
seeing a fish called lettuce leaf.
Yeah, there's pictures, they'll have pictures of the album. Lettuce leaf, probably not very... Yeah, lettuce leaf was amazing.
It got big as well, sort of a bit bigger, probably a little bit down the line. Maybe was it like a 30-pounder? But
yeah, I mean, I think I had that upper 28s kind of thing. There was 7. So Dippy died, and then I didn't have it. Like 3 months after I started fishing it, it died that summer.
Were you out of your depth at that point, or do you think you would have gone on to catch that fish? Because obviously, it's going to give you chances.
Yeah, I think. You're never going to know. I mean, most people, not everyone caught it. Some people, known people, went there and didn't catch it and then didn't go back for whatever reason. But I think I would have. Even back then, I think I would have. I've always been quite confident. But it was an animal of a lake because of the snags. But if you can tame the other ones, and sometimes them bigger fish aren't as zippy around fast takes, they're slower plodders rather than... So if I was catching the other ones, which I did, and ended up going through the stock multiple times to catch the common, but they were, like you said, they were really nice mirrors. There's probably some pictures of examples of
Chuck some, see if we've got anything in the snake pit folder, Tobes.
And I think there was
the backup fish.
I think I then put it to 7. There's Lettuce Leaf, back one.
We're doing our best off Instagram here.
Yeah,
Tobes,
this is terrible by half.
But it's going to at least show people what that fish looked like. Yeah, I mean it's mega, isn't it?
Twisted scales, flat lobe tail on it. The lettuce leaf is obviously, you can see that front left peck.
Right, I didn't know that. Yeah.
Like a little lettuce leaf, obviously.
Yeah.
Or lettuce peck, lettuce leaf. But yeah, really lovely colours. I mean, again, that's not like a edited, as you can tell from everything.
I can see you've taken a picture of it on your phone.
It's a picture
laying on a print.
Sorry,
print laying on.
And then you've got the date print. It would have been, I know what camera it was, like very, very early for me, like 5 megapixel camera, digital camera that's taken.
So you're printing these out, yourself.
These were probably the last pictures I've ever printed off. I know it because I used to keep an album, but that's been not done for 15 odd years, and some. But yeah, that's lettuce leaf, real nice. I mean, if that was about today, I think that perished with otters because they had otters on there later, and it's fenced and that now. But I think, might be wrong, but I think the common, Mark II common, was ottered eventually. I know that it did go through them quite a bit. But yeah, there's that one and some other mirrors. What they put in there, I think, were really nice fish. And there was a group of 7. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the other. That one that's still going. That one there.
What's that one called?
That's called Stompers Lynn, after a good mate, bless him, that's not with us anymore. But look at me, I had hair and everything. I mean, look at the rubbish in the background. It's not mine. It's just like a bag in the background.
This is like we said, a rough around the edges.
Yeah,
pit always has been.
People
probably different now.
There, like dog walkers. There was he must have worked shift work, and I remember his dog was called Tadpole, and he would walk around the lake at 2 a.m, and it must have been the most disobedient dog ever because he would just be screaming
as if you do
silent of the night.
Yeah,
Tadpole, Tadpole. And you thought if that dog comes back, he's going to get beaten. Yeah. Every night it was always silly o'clock. I only presume he did shift work or something.
Yeah,
and there was always something. I had a helicopter from the police hover above me and lamp me up. Well, they must have found it on like the heat. Source.
You're just lying in the bushes, effectively. Aren't you?
That's a common occurrence in Colchester.
Yeah, and then police come through the bushes with Alsatians or German Shepherds, whatever, behind me, and I don't know actually how I didn't actually brick it. And I was in a little tiny swim that's again no longer there, called the Little Snags. It was, and I always remember it really clear. The dogs were barking loads, and I've got up and they've just shouted at me. The water was rocking from the helicopter because it wasn't that high, and the spotlight on me. I don't know if my mate Mickey was on that night. I don't know if there was anyone else on that night, and it was like, what is going on? And obviously there was often like you'd hear police over the back in the woods. A child had disappeared, and they were searching the woods and things like that. And 2 police officers, whatever, and the front one was a woman with 2 Alsatians, came at the back of the swim, and I've got up, and they just screamed at me not to come up because of the dogs. I'll never forget it. It's pretty sure as a quote for mine, but they said, "Have you seen anything?" And I said, "One showed earlier," and I'll never forget it. And they went, "What? What?" And I was like, I don't think I repeated it, and I thought it was hilarious, but they didn't. And they said, and they then said they were looking for someone lost or something kind of thing. And I said, I haven't seen anyone. And there was nothing else to talk about, but I just never forget it. I've seen my Bosch earlier.
Amazing.
But yeah, it was quite, I wouldn't say that was a norm, but I remember another friend had someone, and someone that works here now, I think was fishing the other side. And there was someone obviously not in the right mindset, and he walked into the lake in the night, and the lad said, like, flashed him up and said, "What are you doing?" It was quite, I think it was quite late or the water was cold. And he said, "Am I in hell?" or something like that. And I think it was Johnny Mann. I think it was either Johnny or Mickey. and they said nearly you're in the snake pit kind of thing, and they ended up calling an ambulance, and an ambulance turned up, and because he probably had hypothermia almost. There was always something going on at that lake, but the stock was worth. I mean, that fish there is 40 odd pounds.
Stompers.
Stompers Lynn, yeah.
As it's risen again, the lake just won't.
Yeah,
you know,
that
will
lake,
always do big fish.
Say
by
the
the
original. I mean, they're all snake pit fish that you're going past. Now. That's snake pit. That's snake. That was a lot of the.
What are these ones? What's that?
So that one's a fish called Popeye. Again, like you.
It doesn't even look like you. Is that even you?
Yeah, look at the hair on that. I know. If anyone sees this, they're going to give me some abuse. I think I've had a hat glued on my head now since then. Look at that hair. But the actual carp itself, like, looks like just an older strain. I mean, that's got a very drop-down tail. Its other eye bulged a lot. But...
Which was the previous one, Tobes, as well? The sort of the one prior to that. The sort of
this one?
Yeah.
Oh, so that was I did a full winter on there one winter.
Yeah.
Because I think I bought a ticket for. Well, it would have been 5 seasons.
Rocking the Ron Thompsons there as well, look.
Yeah, mate, neoprenes. I've had neoprenes for years, but yeah, I mean, I don't know what I was wearing, but I can't really see it there, but I had a scarf around my neck. It just, clothing was...
That looks like, you know, given as it wasn't that long ago, this
No,
has got the vibes of the old tank suits they used to wear and stuff, just like...
I had a hoodie on, obviously, a hat and a scarf like a bloody snowman.
What is that one, the lumpy, lumpy or something?
That's lumpy right.
Lumpy right.
That was quite an odd one. I did catch that a couple of times. There is some other... I don't know if I've sent them over, but some good... pictures when I had it the other time. It looked more red and grey.
I think it's a cool cut. That is for me a real wintry shot. You know, you've got the leaves on the ground, like you can tell that it's.
That was it's the 20th, obviously, from the date printing the picture. I had it in January and March, so probably I think that was the January capture.
Wasn't there some like confusion as to whether left or lumpy right or lumpy left were still in the lake at one point?
Yeah, I think. Lumpy left was quite a friendly. I don't know if I've got the pictures out there, but yeah, I think that was always. I think later and where it had come from as well, because I think it was a bit of a different shape and colour and stuff. But yeah, I mean, all of them really. It's not often I look back and like reminisce too much because I'm always so busy and stuff. But that one's it wasn't. Some of the lads called it a different name because. Terry caught that when he went on for a little bit for Dippy. And that's in his. That one there was in his. It was a fish. Most it's called cluster because all the scales.
Yep.
Again, horrendous. That was the same session as Stompers Lynn, hence the bags in the background and things. But really nice carp. I mean,
how did you catch them? Like, what was the kind of fishing? Because obviously you've got these very, very dominant snags where they live. Are you looking to fish away from those, or are you going to do what everyone else does and fish up to them potentially?
A lot of it was. Fishing up to the snags. I think at times I tried not to and tried to do it other ways, fishing the open water, which I would only fish, although I had a ticket for 5 years, I fished it from early spring, like late winter, excuse me, up until they spawned. And then they spawned, and this is the other thing I think where you touched on earlier about fitting things in. I would generally fish for the carp until they spawned, and then summer I'd go on holiday with the family. I'd have a break, so even if the lake was open 2 months, I probably wouldn't fish too much in the summer because one, trying to catch up with everything else in life, see friends that don't have any interest in fishing, do more things with the family, holidays, and it's not about the weight of them, but when they've just spawned, especially in snake pit where they
beat themselves up.
Yeah, they get smashed through the trees like because they're in the lake everywhere. They just look ropey. They're down. They look a bit banana. The belly and scales are lifted or off, and they just, as much as you said about not wanting the absolute worry about the picture so much, you still want them to look nice for your memory, not to be, battered basically. So a lot of the time I'd kind of to fit things in. The question earlier is I'd have that time out in the summer for a couple of months and then go back on in the autumn, and I've always fished through the winter as well. And I did a complete before, like that was a long time ago with another girlfriend or whatever. I was pretty much fishing every weekend, and I would go over. I'd cycle over on a Wednesday and bait the snags because the winter was all in the snags. I
Yeah.
mean,
Could you see the fish
even the winter, yeah, you'd see not as much, obviously, but you'd see
if the light was
like
right and stuff?
yeah, like a grey white, real deep down, ghost through, and then when you clock one, your eyes adjust a bit, and you'd see another one, and because they're probably all there. But yeah, with the whole style of fishing, a lot of it was. I couldn't always get in the snags. There's two main either side of the snags, but yeah, a lot of it you just think they live in them snags, and when the weed's up, I'm generally not there so much because they've spawned and it's more summertime, which I think opened another door if I'd have been there then, because you just fish up against the weed, which again is not much different to the snags in they hold there a lot more, and it does get choked with weed as well. Yeah, so I fished the snags a lot because I just thought why they were there, they lived in there, and some people fed them in there a lot, so which I never really liked because you're keeping them in there more than if they can do everything in that snags, then they're probably
They're
not
safe
going
as
to come
well,
out.
aren't they?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's not like a bush and you can fish up to it and you're 4 foot away. If they're in the back of the snags, I mean, I had some great sightings of even Dippy and the common, like there was little like rat runs in the back of them, and you could creep down, lay on like, oh, there's Dippy, yeah.
Yeah, Jim Matthews, yeah.
Cool, that's
Yeah. Is that the right one? Yeah.
To the right here,
to
mate.
the right,
The Jim Matthews here, look.
or the top left if
Or
you're
t-
looking, or when it says Ian Bailey, something about
This one here.
that one.
That
There,
one,
yeah, that's
yeah.
it, yeah.
Yeah,
that one
one,
there.
yeah. Yeah, that one.
That one, yeah.
That's Dippy.
Let's throw that up.
And no offence to that capture, but
No, it doesn't look its best there.
no,
but,
it doesn't.
You know,
but
let's-
it was still.
you've done well to find any, mate, to be fair.
Yeah, I've been looking.
Good
I'm
old
trying to think.
Jim.
There was obviously when Terry wrote about his would have been second book, or was it first?
Yeah,
book?
second, yeah.
Second one, yeah, of course it would. There was a story he lent his waders to someone, and because it was a 48 on, 48 hours off, so he lent him his waders, waiting to get back in. He knew it was in there or whatever, and obviously, everyone's
So
read the story.
even in Dippy era, it was in. They lived in the snags at times.
yeah. So that was.
So sorry, you were saying about the crawling down the rat runs and seeing.
Yeah, you could crawl in there like. So you had a swim either side of the snags, and it went into a corner, and there was probably like a good acre of snags. So if you're on the front of them, you're probably 60, 70 yards away if they're in the back, and you could creep around these rat runs. There was probably 2 or 3 main ones, and there was a tree gone over in one of them, so you could and it was laying just above the water, so you could lay on the bough of the tree, and it was 3 foot deep, and it was quite polished off underneath because people did put bait in there and stuff. So it's easier to see on a yellow, like cleaned off, and you'd see them coming in underneath you, and they weren't even that. They knew they were safe. They weren't like spooky, really. You could obviously spook them off if you crunched on a branch heavily, but they were in there, and you could just watch them. And even in the main viewing point, you could stand there and where the sign was saying no fishing in there and stuff, and you could just, even the depths of winter, like I just said, you could see them come through, and you just think they're in there so much. Why would you not fish where they are? You've got they'll probably be on the other side of the lake if they're not there.
No. And so, how did you lay traps to catch them? Given that, as you said, they kind of live in there.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it, I don't know, others probably did it as well, but a lot of it was kind of boilie fishing, chops and things like that. And then I would always, I think it was probably done, I don't really know, but I'd always, as much as I said I don't bait the snag. Trails, yeah, massively.
Yeah.
And you just like get up, there was one I called the peg tree because someone, it must have been for years, like an old telegraph peg. There was just one in it though. It was pretty, but it gave you that little bit of viewing point, and you could chuck it over the tops of the trees and make like a little line. And then when you've got, I never fished it. When I baited it when I was cycling over, I used to give him a bit out, and that was actually in the pond. That was from on the snag swims, but I was just baiting out. It was later into the spring, so the weed was up a bit, and for some reason I just decided to, maybe earlier days, punch a load out there, and I had a bit of time on my hands at the time between jobs, and I was younger and didn't have misses and the house and stuff. But yeah, it was generally kind of clusters of bait kind of out.
How tight to the snags?
I as close as you could get, really. I mean, because it wasn't like a straight line of snags. It was like hickledy-pickledies. I wouldn't fish in a hole in amongst them, but you'd fish within feet of them. And I don't know if there's a picture there at all, like a scenic shot. I'd always have single bank sticks. I'm pretty sure, probably not very early days, but it ended up sort of storm poles in the water, pointing at the spot I was fishing. So there was no like rod tip going round. And if you couldn't get it exactly pointed at, there was always like a storm pole 6 inches back from the tip eye and locked up. And I've seen this low. I'm not saying. I've heard recently someone, that'd be. I mean, must have been that winter because
you see the single bank sticks anyway, at least in evidence.
Yes, you can't see the poles in the end, but there would have been in there poles on the end.
So that's the swim to the left of the snags, looking.
That was the little snags, and it's literally the front of the swim. It doesn't quite provide.
It's tight, man.
You couldn't step out the front of the. I mean, that's an old Titan for Christ's sake, but you couldn't step out the front of the swim and get round the front of the the Titan, a lot of it was in white. I think that's why I always had neoprene waders, because I'd sleep in waders in that swim.
I was going to say, there's no relaxation in this fishing, is there?
And when them rods go, the first 5-10 seconds, you're not fishing far out. You're only fishing 20 yards out most generally. You could fish further out in the other swim, but that was what they call the dippy channel. So if you go as you're looking at that, to the right of that, there was kind of the margin, and then the snags came off the margin and then came back, but there was like a channel created. You won't see it on that kind of Google Maps picture, but there was like a channel between the margin trees and where the trees then come back on themselves. Yeah. And you'd fish up there.
You'd have one up that.
I fished there, 2 on a 6-month, like 2.
Oh, they're both up the dippy channel.
Yeah, which you can never fathom it out, but the amount of times you'd wipe out, I'd never used to wipe out another line there. I think maybe because you hit them, you got them up in the water, and you're only fishing 15, 20 yards, probably there, not even that kind of thing. It was, I don't know exactly, because we didn't use wraps and stuff. You just cast it and watched it in kind of thing. And it shelved up a little bit, and it was, I'd have 2 side by side, like,
and is this, given that it's such a known spot, was this like machine gun gravel by this day? All year round sort of thing?
I think that spot, that in the dippy channel at the end of it, was like that. It was like crack down.
What were you doing with your rigs because of that? How clear that is?
I used to use. It's weird because you're not allowed like any lead core or anything like that, which I can see why it wouldn't be allowed, but also it would help in aiding because it was all tubing, and I used to thread like a metre of tubing up just because I thought it would protect my line a bit more back then. And then sometimes blobs of putty on the tubing as well, because tubing wasn't what it is now either. It wasn't as supple and probably as heavy. I used to say far away rigs. I used to use on there, pretty much 95% of the fish I caught out there was 15mm boilie on a lot of it was mantis, 25-pound mantis hook link, Drennan Continental boilie hook because they were sharp and quite strong. Whipped on a bit of shrink tubing over it just to line it all up a bit because of the eye and stuff like that on that hook. And then obviously a bit stripped back so the hair was supple. And I used to use, they did matching pop-ups, but the bait I was using at the time, the pop-ups were just not like the bait. They were like an airball that didn't resemble it, didn't really smell like it, and I just didn't. So I used to use, really weird, but I caught a lot of fish out of there. And it was a 15mm boilie with a cork plug that I used to trim up to try and imitate a tiger nut. I don't think you're allowed tigers on there either. Not that I was using them, but over the top of it to pop it up. So there was a 15mm bait and probably about a 14mm bit of whittled cork on the top as a pop-up. So it was off, and then a bit of putty to gauge the height of it. And so it was, mantis was kind of probably the newest kind of braided hook link back then, using it in the, I think they did a 25-pound. It would have been 20 or 20, whatever the strongest one was. Lead clips, about a metre of tube. It must have looked horrific. I mean, with all the underwater stuff now, although I thought it was the one, probably, I mean, it worked. It kept working. So,
and in terms of once they followed this trail to your hook, to your bait, to that spot, what kind of bait situation were you trying to create around the hook baits?
It was all just, it'd have been just catapulted boilies kind of
So
thing.
you put a few out though, or?
Yeah, quite. I never fished it heavy, like kilos and kilos, like some lads did. But yeah, it was always, I don't know, because it was all catapulted. So it's like when you're catapulting at short range, I probably did put out more than I could probably quote on, because you just start, you've got a 5 kilo bag of baits in there and you just keep pinging it. It's so easy and it's all going so well. But yeah, probably if you said like a kilo of bait, maybe more sometimes if it was going really well.
So you were inviting them on to actually have a proper grub.
Yeah, you kind of. It just you left them little trails, and
would you get little indications when they were about? Because I presume you're bowstringing.
It's weird because you never, if you put a kilo of boilies out and there's a couple of hundred, if there's 215 mil boilies there, the chances of them getting that one, although it's popped up and it's probably a bit more in their face, you're never going to know if it's the last one or the first one. I don't know. I mean, I don't remember getting many liners, to be fair. But
maybe because they were bowstringed in there, sort of thing. And
maybe, like I say, they were always coming the right way, if that makes sense.
Rig end first.
Yeah. So they're always coming from the danger end of the snags.
Did you tend to bait beyond your rigs if you could?
Only with the try not to. I'm not going to say like with a catapult, you get a few that ping through, but it didn't really matter because you were leaving trails into the snags anyway, and you could see them sitting. There was one near this peg tree. You could get up that, and you could see the carp like a rod length out, sitting in the snags. And you're only like 20 foot away from them in the dippy channel because it was down the back of the snags almost kind of thing. So you knew they were close, so you put the trails in. You could throw baits on their head; they wouldn't really do much because they were safe. But they were always then coming to the rig danger. Never really probably fought it through sometimes if it was too much, but the light, it was just, I don't remember having many liners. It was just 0 to 100 in a nanosecond. And
what, you plunge the rod into the water and just crank, or
just crank, like it was. And again, this probably snag fishing. I think if you're doing it in that situation, I mean, the rods I had then would be, thinking about it again now, would be flop sticks.
Yeah, of
they
course.
Were Dictator Zs.
Yeah.
Like 2 3/4 kind of thing. They were probably very, although they were new kind of thing to me, they were probably quite a soft rod.
Absolutely.
Which probably aided in not because you did get hook pulls. I think everyone that's fished there, when they're going for an area, you need to turn them and pull them away. And that first 5 seconds was whether you won or lost the battle, because you turned them. And as soon as you got them turning, you're going the right way, you keep them coming. And within 10 seconds, they're away from safety, or 5 seconds, they're away from safety. Or unfortunately, probably I used some small hooks, like to what we use now, size 4s everywhere and things like that. The hooks was tiny that I was probably using, which, going back to would you catch dippy, I'd say I would have, but thinking about it, now you just think, oh, what was I doing? Using them, even a size 6 and quite a small gauge, they're almost like an in-between gauge sort of thing. And I think at one point I was using an 8 on there. Because they was that much sharper than that, but it just worked. And I actually caught the common from that swim.
Okay.
I'd lost it a month prior to it from the other side, and I had in my head it would almost alternate. Again, that common it definitely got lost more times, but it was a once a year fish, that snake, the second common. Sometimes it might do 2 captures, but it was definitely hooked more because of the environment of the lake. There was lost fish. I think we were all to blame for that. It's just the lake. I think since day dot, that lake, people lose fish in it. I think they always will, kind of thing. But yeah, it was, I'd lost it. So in I caught it in October. In the September, I was baiting out in the lake, and quite heavily with boilie. And a friend actually rang me up when I was at work after a bait up. He was there, And he said, he was opposite on the point, and he said, I'm pretty sure I've just seen the common show on your bait kind of thing. And he didn't jump on it. He stayed doing his guide. I was quite, when you bait in a lake, it's one of the things, you either do it secret squirrel, and if someone drops in it, they're innocent, or you try and create a bit of a gap by telling people. But either way, anyone can go if you're not there, or you know,
yeah, of course,
occupying the swim. It's free for everyone. And yeah, I ended up getting the bite out of the other swim in open water against a big wall of weed. That was like, because it was September, the weed was still strong and rife kind of thing, and I was just giving it to him loads out there. On a Sunday when I left from fishing, and a Wednesday I was putting like 5 key out, which again in some terms isn't kind of thing, but compared to what I was doing, it was 10k a week going in.
It's a lot of money, that.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've always paid for bait. I get, you know, cheaper and stuff like that kind of thing, but back then as well, I was going through it. 10k a week kind of thing adds up. And then not long after my mate had I don't think it was that weekend, it might have been a couple of weekends later, I had a fish, it went through the weed bed, I pulled it in like a dead weight. Again, I'd lost the fish a couple of times by this stage, once close in. There was once in November in the full winter I did every weekend. I did the weekend, lost one, and the previous weekend to that, my friend had dropped in the swim because he was down before me, and he'd lost one. And the next weekend I see it with a line mark, like really glowed up, kind of like pin line down its flank. No damage other than that. There was no rig in its mouth and that. It was like, it's probably going to be mine because his was 2 weeks ago. It wouldn't stand out, but it was one of us that had lost it. And anyway, I pumped this fish in from the main snags, got to the edge, and there was just like I'm sure there was a fish on, but there was just weed everywhere, like much bigger than this table, and the net was pointless.
Redundant, yeah.
But it was kind of dipped in at the edge, and I was pulling the weed off, and then I pulled a bit off, and I just see its head and its gill case and a bit of its flat, and it was common, obviously, and there was another couple that were upper 20s at the time. Nothing, it wasn't them, it was massive. I'd seen a few big fish, but you just know, if you haven't, you know, a 20 pounder it's obvious, it's the size of it in every dimension is different. And I just remember pulling this weed off, uncovering its head, and it was kind of like just laying in it. I was trying to get the net up from underneath it, and I had the tube, and I'd wrapped it on my hand so it couldn't go anywhere, which is probably a bit stupid if it did go somewhere. And it just started getting a bit of momentum up as it seen the light, and there was still loads of weed around it, and it started giving the old head shake wobble. And I was like trying to just pull both landing net arms up, and then the hook pulled, and it kind of laid there like motionless, like for probably again only like a split second. But they just, like, when you have a hook pull close in, they just don't realise they're free, and they just lay there almost. And then it literally just like dropped through the weed, and there was a bit more of an opening now so I could see the fish. And I actually still thought, has it gone in the net? And I don't know how I'd have felt about that anyway. But eventually I got the net up, and there was nothing in there but weed. And I was just like, and then it kind of, what I was sad about was the whole, it get caught from that swim, and then that, and I had that in my head. I don't know if it was a definite, but I think it just seemed to. And then the little snags hadn't been fished for a while because the weed was choked down this channel. So I started baiting it at the end, but leaving the weed in. And then I was just between jobs as well at this time as well. It's kind of, it's part of it. I had a lot of time on my hands. I was kind of out all weekend. I didn't have a missus or a child or anything like that at the time. So I would party all weekend from Friday to Sunday morning or whatever, and then fish. And I'd generally like stay in the swim till a lad I knew was coming down
proper
the
rotating,
Friday. Kind of thing, and let him have his turn, like Friday afternoon or whatever, and then I'd go out partying and drop back in Sunday morning. And rightly or wrongly, whatever, that's what I did. And I went in there, and I think But to start with, sorry, it was choked with weed, and I was baiting the end of the dippy spot, the dippy channel, and it got a couple of weeks of no fishing, and then another lad did drop in there. He went and cleared the weed, like himself, and we were like, oh.
Now he's going to think that he's opened the swim back up.
Kind of, yeah. And he went in there, and he had a bit of time on his hands as well, and he can catch carp.
Yeah,
he can definitely catch them. And back then, he's younger than me by 5 years, I reckon, and I was fairly young, like mid-20s, I suppose, whatever. And he just didn't. I think, and might be wrong again, he was using more like particles and cheaper, trying to bulk things out. I'm not saying that's didn't work, but you're fishing for a big fish down there, and I was giving them boilies and lots of them, and they'd been around the lake as well. It wasn't just that scenario. A month prior, I was giving it to him out in the open water and in the weed bed kind of thing. And I think he did 3 or 4 nights in there, and I was like hovering, like. And I don't think.
What did you do with yourself? Because you planned to be there, presumably.
I think I carried on fishing the main snags, just so I was there,
so you could swoop.
Yeah, and he's a mate, he's a good lad, and I was giving him a lot of banter, like wasting the swim. Come on, mate, you gotta get out there. They don't want to eat pigeon conditioner, kind of like just all friendly banter. It wasn't like in any way like, you know, I was trying to get him out of there, admittedly, but there was nothing like there was no malice with it or anything like that. And eventually he come out, and I don't know if he'd have been fishing the spot without a doubt. He knows how to fish. Don't know if he caught anything or not though. He may have had one, but he didn't have a lot. And I think it was the end of October. It'd have been 16th of October I got in there, and I think I then did 4 nights leading up to the cap. That was the 4th night, was the cap fell 4th morning. I think I had like 7 bites and landed 5, kind of which the other 4 were repeats, because by this stage I've been on there quite a few years, just been unlucky with the common, went through all the mirrors, which I'm glad I did, and not quite as much. But when I look back now at them pictures of them scaly ones, there's not really a local stock that was actually like lettuce leaf and Stomper's Lynn and Popeye and that kind of caliber of fish type and that strain and stuff. There's even the match bit, they weren't that stockings kind of thing. And there was a bit of mystery of where they'd come from because of dippy and all that kind of thing. But yeah, and then I think the 4th morning anyway, again, you got the bite. And it's, like I said earlier, that whole, I was bouncing around a bit now, but I was sleeping in shorts, because rather than sleep in waders and then just be uncomfortable, I would sleep in shorts in that shot you had earlier. I would just jump in with like in motion, like it was shallow in front. Yeah. The rod would go, and it was none of this fishing locked up, get a 1-tone. You don't. You get a the bobbin's set that far from the blank. Everything's screwed in properly. It's a stretching line. That's all they're getting. And if the rod tip, it wasn't pointing directly at it, it might move a bit. That's all they're getting. And it just, every bite was, even like the 20s or whatever, it was savage kind of. It just explodes for 5 seconds, 10 seconds. And I just remember jumping in. I was sleeping in shorts and jumping in. But that morning, this is it. That morning I was running out of bait. And I arranged to meet my mate who I was getting bait direct from the company over at like 9:30 or 10 in the morning. He couldn't do it later. And I was like, okay, well, I'm over the lake. I'll reel in at like, it was something stupid like 9:30 I had to reel in to go so he wasn't waiting. And I got up that morning and I hadn't had one that morning. I might have had the day before. And I put my waders on that morning. So because it's late October now, the water's chilling off.
Oh yeah.
And I was jumping in swimming shorts and then getting changed and stuff. It was a bit stupid really, but I put waders on and sitting there, and it was 9:10. So I had 20 minutes until I was reeling in and going. This is the whole fine line things I could with the whole going to work before bite time and all that kind of thing. But you do what you can do, and the rod busted off. I jumped in And of all the bites that I'd had in that swim, like I said earlier, fishing like that close together, same rigs, none of them ever picked up the other rod. But this one, I'm bringing it in, and it's rolled probably halfway back, and I've seen it's it. And I'm in my waders and I'm pumping, and all of a sudden it's kicked down a bit, and it's picked up the other line. And I don't know if there was a bit of weed back from it or something at the spot, but it was locked up on the reel this end, and it was like stuck that end. And I've got the common back to Savay, and it's hanging itself on the other line, and I can't do anything with it. And I'm in the water, and the rod's locked, and I'm like, there was a friend in the swim opposite, but he'd come down late the night before, and he was soundo. And it all happened so quick. I don't think he even probably knew I was into the fish at the time. And I remember leaning back, because it was away from the snags now, but it's still kind of pretty hairy kind of thing.
At this point, you're going to lose it again, aren't you?
Yeah, and it was like, and I've lost it a month prior, and I've lost it a few times. And it's like, this fish is giving me the runaround. And I don't think it had been out for 13 months, banked at the time. And I just remember leaning back, grabbing the other rod, just the side of the spigot, and just pulling it off the buzzer into the water. So that rod sunk to give me a bit of slack. And then I've gained, it wasn't far away, it was hanging itself. And I've then, what happened? There was another little moment again. I remember I don't know if it was still not close enough, but it was, I've done everything I can now. The other rod's sunk as well. That's disappeared. That's at the bottom of the lake. And it's not far out of netting reach. There's a bit of a shelf there. And I've pushed off the shelf because I want this fish. Yeah. And I've netted it. And it's kind of sunk into there a little bit because it's still attached to the other line, so it's holding it up. All I'm worrying about is that net cord being above the surface. It can't get out. It can't do it to me. And then I'm kind of getting this predicament that
you're in waders in the water.
I'm full up
treading water,
waders, trying to tread water. I'm not the best swimmer. And it probably don't try this at home.
No, definitely not.
No, and it was a long time ago.
Yes.
I was probably a bit healthier and fitter, but I ended up, I somehow got back to the shelf, and I couldn't get up the shelf. And the waders, as I was trying to come out, you could feel the weight of them, because as you're coming out, they're full up, they're like ballooned kind of thing, neoprene waders. And all I am focusing on is that net cord staying above. I think I've dropped the rod that it was attached to, that I'd caught it on. So the rod's like, it was just carnage. And then I somehow got back up. It wasn't deep, but it was deep enough to be
a problem.
And it's like 20th of October, so it's pretty cold. I'm feeling the cold now, and I've kind of got out, and I've just got up onto the ledge eventually, and it's in there, and there's lines everywhere, and there's rods. There isn't any rods around because they're all sunk. And then I remember shouting across the lake like hysterically, like I'd been played, like something had happened. And he just pulled his door open and put his thumb up, and I went, "Is it?" kind of thing. "Is it?" kind of thing. And then I remember him coming round, and then I couldn't get out the water because the waves were too heavy, and there was a bit of a step from the water to the front, and there was no room. And yeah, I just remember I had shorts on underneath with football socks pulled up because I'd been just sleeping in shorts, and he just kept saying to me, just go and get changed, you're gonna get hypothermia. And I was so like, that's what it is. In that moment, if you could bottle that moment of adrenaline and everything, that was probably keeping me going. And it was just I must have changed clothes, but yeah, there it is. And that was 2008, and that was, I think, still, that was 47.6. There wasn't many commons.
No.
Like, I think that was that the year that Terry had the Burfield common? I know he had it summer capture, but I think it was that year, and that was 46. Was it?
Yeah.
It was didn't really think about it at the time, and it was bigger than it had. I mean, you can see it's full, like back end there. And the other thing as well with that capture is you couldn't go and look in the day in the snags, but a mate had caught it about 4 years prior at 41. And I was in the swim next door because I got down, I got dropped off. The lake was busy. I ended up, the snag swims were gone. I went in the little, the hole in the wall next door. And because I was just fishing open water, like close in, I walked to the snags that evening when my mate Pete was in that swim. And you used to see them a lot in the snags. Every day you could find them. And that fish on that particular morning, I think it was May time, there weren't like a cluster, there was like a line, and the common was at the front. It always was a bit more reserved, probably why it didn't get caught as much. And it was at the front of these 7 or 8 fish, like a train. And I went back to Pete that morning and said, that evening it was, sorry, I said, you're catching that common tomorrow. It is charging around there. And exactly the same happened when I reeled in the day, like 2 or 3 o'clock. I think I might have shot home for a shower because it was local. And then I looked in the snags on my return with supplies and stuff, and it was charging around. And it's it got caught other times, but both occasions I was like, this is it, this is happening. And it was charging around, leading fish around at the front. And it was that was a long drawn out, but I loved it on there. Like as much as at the time when you're in it, it feels like, am I ever going to catch this? But then I kind of wouldn't change anything about it. Kind of obviously losing it was never good, but it kind of added to the final moment kind of thing. That was probably obviously I went on there for Dippy died, and then because that was 36 pound at the time, I just carried on fishing because it was as bigger than anything else I'd fished for, and as I say, obviously the match pit fitted in between. I fished the match pit, then went back. So I did a full winter on Snake 2005, and then the next year I wasn't doing it again because it was savage, like the snow shots and everything else. And I did catch most weekends right for that winter. It was a really good. I had it going well. Then went back to the match pit for that Guesty 2006, and then 2 years later, that one finally slipped up. So it was a long. I don't think I've fished anywhere that long, kind of thing, like 5. Although I didn't fish it in the summers and things like that. And I think the springs, to be in the end, I wasn't even fishing the spring so much because they were getting so busy. I think that fish had done 45 to someone like 13 months prior to it. So it was well on the map. We all knew of it locally, and other people probably. I think it drew in some people. Obviously, it's a big common, but still is today. It's only this year that I've caught a common bigger, to be fair, and that's 15 years ago. And I don't know if I've fished for any bigger because I've loved me mirrors, but there's always there's other fish in a lake, and you might, in this day and age, there's a lot, and Essex has been blessed with a lot of big commons as well, to be fair. But yeah, that was the snake. And I have been, again, it's weird going back. I've popped over there and seen mates. I think I even went over this year and see a friend for a cup of tea and that. And it just doesn't feel the same. I think everyone has their period they're in a lake, and the prior people will slate or slag off like it after they've gone, oh, it's changed, it's not the same. And it isn't. The original days weren't the same. That wasn't even in there. Didn't exist in there, kind of thing. And now that doesn't, that's long gone now. Stompers Lynn's still in there, which
amazing.
Is the other one, like I said earlier, like the warrior out of the local ones, and Stompers Lynn because it's a mate that passed away and it's the namesake and all that as well. It didn't get named after he passed. It was when I think he called it twice years ago before I was even on there. And they said, oh, what is it? And they said, oh, call it Stomp. It's just a reference point, isn't it? Of course, really?
Yeah.
But yeah, I've said to a lot of mates that are like local that don't travel, you need to fish for that. The lake is amazing. The history with it adds to me for it.
Definitely.
And it's a really nice car. That common, I loved it. I've caught a lot nicer looking commons. It's not the absolute, like the cut. It's quite bright on that picture, I think, but I've caught nicer looking commons, but with everything that goes with that and the snake pit, it was very, very special, to be fair.
Now, I know you still fish Essex and local, but we're going to move away from that local fishing just now because this seems to have been a bit of a watershed moment. You catch the snake pit common, and then you're going to actually start travelling for your fishing, and that's become a real feature, hasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, I haven't caught everything around that area. Obviously, there's fish everywhere. Like every county's got hundreds of thousands, whatever. But yeah, it just I've always liked the old ones and the kind of known, what even call them, ones that are in the books. That a lot of them are obviously passed away, and I think there was certain ones I wanted to catch, and there was probably quite a lot, and they were all on the road, kind of long way away, and it was the next kind of step really.
So there was long way away, and then there's Reading, which is like you're driving past a lot of fishing to get to Reading, aren't you?
Yeah, the Pingewood one, getting started on there was a really what's it called, spur of the moment type thing. I'd been out or something on a night out the weekend or whatever. I always had mags everywhere in the house and stuff like that. I was living on probably my own at the time, I think. I don't know if I was with the missus or not. No, I probably would have been. But there was always people crashed at my house the night before, and I think I got up, sat around for a bit. I'm a bit impatient, don't want to sit indoors. It was totally legal to drive and things like that, and picked up a magazine on I think it was like page 4 or something. It was always in carp. That was like the big headline type page, or 3 or 4 or whatever. And there was actually a picture of Terry with the Brute. He'd had it a few times. Obviously, he was fishing for the jockey. It was an old magazine. It wasn't. It was probably dated years before.
I think he did catch it sort of 03-ish, around that sort of time, maybe.
Yeah, I can't even remember what year it
04 maybe
was that he caught. I know he did catch it a couple of times, I think, leading into trying to catch the jockey. And I'd read other things. There was a lad called Nathan that had fished it in the past. I remember reading in one of the other mags a series or an article about it. And it was always one. It was the fish in there was the Brute. Obviously, it was an old one. A lot of people said it was one of the last of the old. It isn't the last. There's still a few about, but it was another quite known one and stuff. And it was massive kind of thing. It was again another step on. I think it did 54s. I believe at one point. And there was a picture of it, like with Terry with it, probably black and white, I think actually. And I literally just typed in on my phone. It's probably the same phone I've still got, to be fair, but on the old sat nav, like Pingewood, and it come up and it was something like 127 miles, 123 miles from where I was sat. And I knew it was a Reading district town. I knew that from some of the articles, and I literally just got up, said to a couple of mates, and one of them did actually fish. It was on one of the other couches kind of thing, and I said, I'm going to Pingewood. And I don't think he was even really conscious. And I just got up literally that morning and didn't even know where the lake was in Pingewood.
Pingewood wouldn't take you to that lake either, would it?
No, and I just typed in. I knew there was a series of lakes there, and it was RDAA, like Reading Angling, sorry. And I just drove. I just got in the van and just drove, and I ended up a couple of hours later, I'd found a series of lakes. Obviously, I'd read a few articles on it, and I ended up walking round a lake with an RDAA sign on. Obviously, I now know it kind of well enough, but and I come across a couple of islands, and I was like, "This isn't right. Pingewood. This isn't right," kind of thing.
You're gonna have to help me.
No, you've got to find it, Toast, because just like Kempy did on the way over there, you've now got to find it.
So
you were up against it, mate, weren't you?
So basically, to help Toby a little bit, you can't really see it. There's
I'll tell you what, Toby, we'll give you a little clue. It's really close to the motorway.
I thought it was this one.
Very close, but not close enough.
No.
Is it this up here?
No. Getting close. There
you go. Well done, mate.
Yeah, Toby's. Yeah. So you got the M4 up. Anyway, there's a little country lane you can kind of see running just north of it, kind of thing.
Yeah, between that and Englefield. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I was on the other side of the road. I was actually on the corner of Flint, and I could see these islands stuff. So I ended up ringing her mate James, that knows everything, and
JT probably.
Yeah. And I said, I'm looking for Pinge. I'm on a lake, there's islands, and he just said, turn around, walk around, and go across behind you, which I did. And that was the kind of, it was a weird one. I just went there, knew the Brute was in there, knew it was big, it was old, it ticked all the boxes, which I like to, if I'm going to travel, it's got to tick all the boxes, because like you said at the start, I've driven past like Lodercombe Valley, Lee Valley, which I've fished in as well.
Yeah,
I think
both of, yeah.
to get to. Why would you go past them? There's obviously good fish that I've driven past.
In your defence, thinking about it now, the Brute, I don't think we've seen another carp quite like that.
Yeah, their head was.
It's pretty unique beast.
Yeah, like deep, kind of grey, like at different times of year, it looked quite greyish.
Could look washed out even.
At
light grey and stuff. But
yeah, I see it look a bit more chocolatey. I think I see it on the
some
bank.
of those latter captures, like you said, the 54-pound. I think like in the I think we did a November capture, like really late on. Looked dark.
I think a chap called Martin caught it in the October, potentially November. It was late in the year. Opposite me actually, and that was, I think that was £52 to be fair. So it was doing 50. I think it got. I don't think I was there for the other capture, but it done 51 and 52 when I got the ticket. But anyway, I walked around, found it after a bit of guidance. Did a lap. There's a little gate there that I just jumped over. Did a lap. It would have been a Sunday. By the time I got there, it was probably gone 1 o'clock and stuff. After probably a pit stop for a coffee or whatever. And a bloke had just had pecks. Actually, was one of the other fish in there.
£40 at one stage, wasn't it?
It is, and it was chucking down with rain. I walked round, and there's a little kids area type that they do. I think once in a blue moon they do a bit of like kayaking on the lake. There's like a kids type thing that there. There's a little like outside pergola marquee, and I was sheltering under that from this rain. And this chap come over from it. It's actually quite known, caught loads of wicked fish, but he's deaf. Obviously his speech is probably. And he come over and he was trying to tell me about he just had pecks.
Yeah,
and I was like, couldn't quite understand him. Didn't really know who he was and stuff.
Yeah.
And later on, I did find out, that he was deaf, obviously, and he just had pecks, and he was obviously massively buzzed because it was kind of like not shoulders from Horton, but kind of that condensed, short, solid carp kind of thing. And I just walked round. He was buzzing, obviously, and that kind of buzzes you up, even though I didn't see it. It wasn't my moment, but it was. Only other anglers can relate to that buzz. And I think I then did a lap or so, or a few, drove home, applied for the ticket, and I think. Back then I think it's changed now in Reading. I think because of the lakes across the road, it's a bit harder to acquire a ticket. It's probably not that hard, but it was their premium kind of water out of the lot, whereas now I think Engleford or Flint probably is what's in there. Yeah, applied for a ticket, got a ticket within a week, 10 days or whatever. And I must have been, I'm trying to think leading into it, where I was fishing prior to it, but I must have finished up there, caught the one I wanted. And to be looking for somewhere technically and driving all that way, and then kind of jumped on it. And some of the other mirrors in there, I think there's a few you've got, were really nice old carp.
Again, it's your chocolate box stock again, isn't it?
Yeah. There was licorice, all sorts kind of thing, but there was some really good carp in there, kind of thing. That first one you went to, that was my first carp out of there, which I was in a swim and there was a buoy quite short out, probably for the water sail. I mean, that photo it was a bit of a friendlier one, but it was so... The wrinkles in it, I think maybe the other side. You can kind of see it.
On the shoulder as well, you can see the sort of those creases and stuff.
Yeah, and I think it must have been the other side. There was some like little starburty scales that were so embedded.
What one's that called?
That's Popeye, was called. It was quite a friendlier one.
Are you on the motorway bank there? Is that...
Yeah, that's Motorway Point.
Right.
That is. There's a buoy probably 20 yards out in front of that, slightly to the left of the swim. And you've got a lot of water, but they were showing like literally a rod length, 2 rod lengths behind it. And I walked up and down between that swim and the swim to the left, which I think is, it's called something like Tell's Patch or Tell's or something like that, probably because he spent a lot of time there or whatever. And trying to work out the best angle because they were showing behind the buoy and I couldn't safely fish to it. So I waited for him to stop showing that morning, led it around the area, and there was a really nice area, but it was too long past it. You just, unless you had a boat sitting there, you could just let them run, jump in the boat and go out to them. It wasn't safe to fish it because it'd have got caught on the chain, cut off, snagged fish, whatever. I went to the next swim and I went back and forth trying to see the best, because the next one was further down. It created a better angle to kind of go along it, behind it almost. So that cursor, if you go to the left and down, where's that hump? Like that, yeah, that's it. That's motorway point, maybe slightly to the right, but that pretty much area. And there's another swim to the left. Round, no, up a bit. No, sorry, right. Left a little bit. Left. Yeah, but around that, maybe a bit. Yeah, that kind of, there's another swim, so it created maybe a better angle, but it still wasn't ideal. And then they stopped showing us. I leaded it up and got as close to the ball, and I think I was probably about like 2 foot past it. I was pretty much level with it, and then just fished it locked up and just sat there, obviously, got them sorted like 2 or 3 in the afternoon. And then the next morning they turned up again. Like, doesn't often happen.
No,
the amount of time
the classic scenario.
Yeah, what you want, and we all kind of sit up all morning waiting for them. They show up, you move on them later in the afternoon and thinking, next morning they're going to be here. And so many times they're not. And that time they started, not loads, because it wasn't it was a nice stock. I wouldn't say it was low stock, but there was a few in there, kind of thing. I can't remember what time, like early morning. The rod shot off, kind of thing, pulled up. There was a bit of a drop. It wasn't like snag fishing, but because of this buoy. And pumped in, and that fish, that Popeye, was my first one. I think it was 36 something,
big,
kind of thing.
Yeah,
quite a big fish.
What was the spot like that when you led it up? What had you found that they'd done to the lake bed?
I think behind, further out, where I wanted to fish was, I'm not going to say like you said, a machine gun gravel. It wasn't that blatant, but it was broken. It was probably what they were on, whatever that was there. I mean, there were some massive hatches on that place. Some of the hatches that went on there, the seagulls and things like that were like, you could have, it was such a giveaway. They were just bombing the water, and the shows are all a bit funny and stuff. And it did do zig captures, but I'm just not a zig fan. I did actually put a zig out under a bit of pressure, because the swim I was in another time, they were there, and there was a few bods there, and they were like, you pretty much were almost wasting the swim by being on the bottom like I was.
Yeah, if you're going to be, zigs aren't my thing, they'd be like, well, they are mine, so let me
it was kind of like that. That's Pingewood again. That's lovely. Sunset, there must be in the Pallets Bay. I liked it in there. It was, again, I just like it like a mess, and that was always flooded, and there wasn't much dry bank to set up on, but it was a lovely bay.
I think that's all shut off now, from what I've heard. Yeah, I think I think in the end the houses were sick of having people. I could be completely wrong. Apologies, Dale, if I am, but in the end, I think they're having people along the bottom of your garden probably isn't.
Oh, right. It's what, that whole bank's closed?
Certainly the Pallets swim. Maybe I'm wrong.
That was
don't contact me. Contact Toby if I am.
Speed dial 1 for that one. I end up putting a zig out of almost very half-heartedly. I'm not a zig angler. I don't do it. It costs me bites probably at times, but I just don't. They work. They catch. Even like regardless of all the foul hookings that they can have. It's just not for me. It just feels very alien. I suppose like anything, if you do it, and if I was to catch. But if I put a zig out that time, a couple at like 10, 12 foot or whatever, where they were, got a bite quite quick after. Had to get the boat because it had got snagged on some weed. It was like April time, I think. Some weed from last year that was hanging around or whatever. It was like lightish gear, so you didn't want to give it the big one kind of thing, which again is another reason. If I'm going to fish and want to land them, there's no point fishing at all costs, whether it's snag fishing incorrectly or anything. What's the point of getting a bite to lose it? It's the worst feeling there is. Ended up having to get a bailiff over there, get the boat out, all this thing. There was a big crowd behind me. They'd carried a picnic bench behind the swim, so I'd get in higher and try and plug it out the weed. Went out there in the boat, life jacket, all that kind of thing, and on a bailiff. I didn't see it because I was at the back of the boat and he was right at the front, and he netted it. And it was a slight cricket bat common, probably old, but just a bat common. And I never see, because his body was shielding the plane a bit. I could see it splashing and stuff. Never see it when it was in the net. I then rowed back, or he has, got it out, and when I unrolled the mesh, I was probably blocking the view of everyone else. It was in the peck. And I unhooked it and was just putting it straight back, and there hadn't been a fish out for a while. And a few of the lads were like, what are you doing? And I was like, it's in the peck, lads. And they were like, I think someone said, yeah, but it might have been in the net rowing back. And I was like, yeah, but I'm never going to be able to prove that. Like, even if there was a hook holding its mouth, it could have pulled, and it's a lost fish there, and it's just caught it in the peck on the way through. And that kind of probably killed my zig fishing forever, because it
could have been the brute, mate, couldn't it, ultimately?
But then I don't know how I'd have felt if it had been a special, like, it was still a fish and it was nice, but if it had been one that I was travelling that way for, and technically when the first time I physically see it, it's in the peck, well, it ain't right. If I'd have seen it in the boat and it had been in the mouth 100%, and then you row back and it gets dislodged and caught up, then it only counts to me. So if everyone else was like, oh, it's in the peck, and I was like, yeah, but it wasn't when it was in the net, I could live with that, but I can't live with not knowing.
No, of course.
But so I ended up, zig fishing wasn't my thing, but the spot was broken, I'd say, but the spot I actually fished off and caught on was just a smooth area, so it wasn't anything.
Nice.
It's what I look for a lot these days, but it's the area they were working was further out, but I couldn't safely fish for that.
Do you just to without sort of detouring too heavily? You say these days. Do you think that there's more emphasis goes onto the clearer spots? Therefore, you're looking for something in the silt, or is it because that's where the food is? Like what's
bit of both? I think. I mean, you could argue that either way, and the fact that what you said is the naturals are in the silt predominantly. They're not on like the machine gun gravel, but what is on the machine gun gravel is boilies every day.
Yeah, so which is natural food to some fish, isn't it? I suppose now.
So it's gone from. Yeah, I've had mates that fish the machine gun gravel all the time and they catch fish, whereas I don't. I generally try and get away from it. But you can argue either way, can't you?
Absolutely.
Because, it's not really when it's that blatant and clear. And it's just the fact that we're all waiting our turn essentially. But when you're fishing the note, like, I've never been into, you get to a lake, you get to meet people and they're like, oh, you're fishing at 16 wraps, 17, whatever. I hate that, in the fact that I don't want to do what you do. Generally, we're all using quite similar rigs, and we all use boilies, or someone use a tiger nut or whatever. So as much as you want to be different, it's all out the same. There's probably 4 or 5 rigs that dominate carp fishing. Whether that's going for the examples, there is. Most fishing's probably pop-ups, generally across the board kind of thing, because they're fishing. And if I don't really watch a lot of the camera stuff underwater. I just don't. It's just
fine.
But it's proven now. Like people have seen it enough. Like rigs getting picked up, spat out, and surely a pop-up's just going to keep resetting if it's the right pop-up rig, obviously. So you're fishing. You need to be fishing as much as you can. Whereas if you've got a supple hook link and it's spat out, is it fishing anymore? I don't know. I mean, you've probably seen more of them than me, but
it really can be better. It can be worse. After being
spat out. Spat out, I suppose.
And what? Yeah, I mean, God, there's a lot of variables here, aren't there? This is perhaps for another day. But the am I right in saying that you use the hinge a lot yourself?
Not really. I have done in the past, but it's like this year, like publicity shy. I can't really go in the water, but I've been just using chods.
Right.
All year on there, which I've used in the past, and like some of my range fishing has been at chods because it goes well. It's good for, and I've just been bouncing around the lake with chods, and they get used again. And the other rig I use probably since 2000, just trying to think where I was at what time. is the old spinner Ronnie.
Oh, really?
I use it a lot of long,
treacherous. You've gone away from the hinge onto the Ronnie. I mean, come on.
But no, and I don't even use it I use it on long booms.
Okay.
I don't use a traditional. Again, like people.
So you've done your own thing with that.
Yeah, it's been done. I didn't invent it. I know some people, swear by it and long booms, and I can't keep them tied up because the booms are too long for a rig wallet. And the other thing with the whole, whatever you want to call it, Ronnie spinner, whatever you want to call it, it's the interchangeable side. I still don't use I use a kicker, but a shrink tubing. So I'll do 20 at home. I don't really do anything fishing related at home, but one evening when everyone's asleep or whatever, I'll steam up 20 and put them in like 3 in a pack and have loads of old hook packets with them in. So all I've got to do is tie up 2 loop with some IQ2 or something like things, fluoro. But I don't just cut it and put a new hook on. So it's not even for the interchangeable side. I just like it's a lowish line pop up. I use it.
So much to like about that rig, isn't there? I suppose.
It is, and it works for
My
me.
information was wrong then. Out there, that you like to hinge.
That's someone with more hair, I think.
Is that?
No, I did at times, and I have used them. I've caught fish on, but I think I remember I was fishing over Northwick at the time, and it was again. I don't know when the date of the first one came out, but it was 2016. I remember that. I know where I was. And I just tried it. I don't know for what reason.
Kind of hook pattern? You sort of all curve, in on the curve, yeah.
Yes, and I still use a size 4 curve now to it.
Yeah,
I don't use obviously they're not a sharpened hook.
Yep.
Hopefully they will be one day. Not at the moment. But yeah, obviously the sharper hook, the Kamakuras and things like whoever you get them done by, they're a massive edge. But everyone's got that. But that was the hook I think it first kind of come with. I think
I think those original, like going back as far as Ronnie's original rig, I believe that was I feel like that was an actual curve. Ronnie, the Elstow angler.
I'm pretty sure that is the Ronnie that I met when I was fishing St Ives.
Oh, is it?
I actually did photos for the lady.
Did you?
I'm sure that is him. Was he from Oxford?
I don't know.
Well, his name was Ronnie anyway, but I remember him waking me up in the middle of the night.
Yeah. Because
he had the lady at like massive weight, like 56 pound, and he was blown to bits. And
let's hope it was him.
I think he definitely was Ronnie.
Yeah.
And that'd have been 2010, 2011. I was on St Ives. But yeah, getting away from all that. I just like it. It hooks well. Some people say it hooks really funny and all this kind of thing, but
I haven't seen that myself.
I know it's going to kiss of death now, but I've got everything written down. Like notes for I used to do it all in a proper diary year to year. Now it's all in notes on my phone, but there's like every night I've done, every swim, every capture, which is what I can always refer to where I was at dates and things like that. And yeah, 2016 I started using that rig, probably not with such a long boom, same material, and it just worked from the off. And it's contradicting because I always say don't change if it's not broke kind of thing. And so I don't know why I changed in it in the first place, but I don't know if I was just over Northwick. There was some younger fish. There were sometimes more catchable than some of the other lakes I've fished, and used it. And I've used it a hell of a lot. I've used it in the edge, stalking, like a foot from the bank, like not such a clean bottom. So rather than you might put a bottom bait and massive lead on it. I've just had them feeding well enough to lower a Ronnie in, lead core coming out the water like that, like proper holding the rod, proper stalking, and it's just nailed them. And I just like that rig, and I know it's very. I think because it's been the hype rig as such, and you can now probably buy them ready tied like most rigs now, but it's got that kind of like nodified.
You do get a lot of pushback when something becomes very popular. That seems to be, especially amongst the more cynical older anglers. Yeah, there's no doubt.
Yeah, I think which
I've been one at times.
Yeah, it gets that label like we talked about a minute ago when you said, "Oh, your hinge rig," and I was like, "No, Ronnie, like,
No,
I just spat your tea out." But
only because of my information was wrong.
all right.
Yeah, I thought you'd turned your back on the hinge, but actually it sounds like you maybe weren't that bothered in the first place.
No, it's I have used it, and I fished the Met. I remember using it quite a lot with like an old like a stiff rigger, like size 2 stiff rigger and that, but or size 4, sorry, Mark 2 stiff rigger. But yeah, I use that a lot. But then this year I've flitted this year. I've always been tunnel vision, one lake, do it till I catch the one I want, and if it's travelling, I know it's very. I hate that whole target hunting type thing, but essentially it is because you're fishing for that one. So you look into the captures, the dates, the moon phases, everything of as much info as you can to put the ball in your court more. But yeah,
But sometimes the rigs do change if you're moving around.
Yeah, like this. Sorry, going at this year on the publicity show I was fishing, I've just used chods, like because I've literally been not running around the lake, but moving. I've had a very good year. Like I've caught a few of them on Ronnie's, but probably 95% have been on chods this year on that water. But yet going to the other waters, fishing the Cone Valley, can't use lead core on there. I know there's setups now that you can use a helicopter on tubing, but I've been using leg clips and tubing and then fishing one of the Ronnie's on it. So I've been doing something all year working on one water, but because of the rules and stuff on there, I've then
had to change.
Yeah.
So take us back to the Pingewood campaign. What were you presenting over that spot that we just talked about?
Probably a hinge now. I'm trying to think what that would have been on. Not ideally, it would have been, like I've just said, like it would have been a pop-up rig.
Yeah,
because that is so much my angling, because I'm just so paranoid, maybe rightly or wrongly, that if it's done, the rig's picked up, spat out, or whatever, you know that it's going to be reset. Maybe not as much as if you've seen it secondhand pop-ups looking hideous because of it. But it'd have been a pop-up. I can't think what exact rig it would have been.
There can't have been that many options, I suppose.
It might have even been, like going full circle in about a minute, it might have been a hinge.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to think what pop-up I would have fished. It could have been a low light hinge. Again, it was a siltier area, like I mentioned. It wasn't
nice.
Yeah, like textbook hinge kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's...
And did you have a plan for how you might catch the brute? Because like you say, it's not low stock. What we're talking, 40, 50
yeah,
carp,
I'd have
something
thought
like that?
probably 40-ish, give
yeah.
or take. I mean, it was...
With a lot of bats, sort of, and then these mirrors.
Yeah,
as well.
there was kind of, I think for some reason, I might be wrong, I'm sure, like I do statistically with things, you kind of... It's nice not to, but you end up sitting there and you kind of... Sometimes it's nice not knowing, but you run through the stock and you can get now pictures of every carp in most lakes very quickly. Even if they're a non-publicity, you know someone that's fished it or a mate of a mate. I think there was 17 mirrors, but it might have been 13, I don't know. It was yeah, I fished lakes with only that many carp in, let alone just the mirrors without all the back commons. And there were some good commons in there as well. Nathan's, that was like on the missing list quite a lot. It was quite an odd one. I don't know. I think it's still going.
It is. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
It was nice carp, very good proportions and stuff. Never caught that one. I think I see it once in the snags. Regards to the plan for there, it was a busy circuit war, if that's the right term for it.
For sure by then.
It was 2013 stroke 14.
Really in the eye of the peak of its.
It was. I think
we had Pex that was big and the Brute
Pex
was big.
40. I think Nathan's was upper 30s at the time, but I think probably next capture, I think it did do 40. Like the floppy tail, that was mid 30s, but then I think it's gone massive now, upper 40s.
Yeah.
But there was areas that I knew the Brute, through looking into it, got caught from a lot more, like the lawn at certain times, slipway, and obviously that's either side of the snags. There's times of Motorway Point and the end of the lake where you said it's all that kind of area. It did get caught from all over, but you got to play the odds somewhat, I think.
Especially if you're driving a long way, you've got no ability to affect the kind of the lake in the interim either. You can't get there to bait up, for instance.
No, I mean, say I can't, there was another lake that was 100 miles away that would probably come on to it potentially, and I was driving there to bait.
But given how busy it was, this possibly was going to be.
Yeah, that's it. It was different because if somewhere there's not fish, you can go there any day of the week pretty much, and you can get your bait in, and you're not affecting anyone because you shouldn't be affecting anyone. Whereas Pinge was massively busy, 7 days a week. So yeah, it was literally just fishing what I would say, like, loved a moon capture kind of thing.
Which moon?
Just a full moon.
Full moon.
Seemed to love. I remember being in the swim that I wanted to go in, and I was waiting to, like, bucketed it. I mean, it's the saddest way, but you had to play the game behind an angler that ended up pushing out, doing an extra night. So I set up somewhere so I could see the water that I was going to move into because it was very busy. And then it was on the moon. It was the May. It was the year before I caught it. It was the May full moon, and he caught it when I would have been in this, like, waiting to go. I mean, he's a very good angler, and he knew it all. And then I think he even see it had a weird shuffle sometimes, the Brute, and it had, because that big sloped over weird head. It was quite noticeable when you see it, you knew, kind of thing. Very unique in that way. And I think it was actually the same moon the following year in the swim that I caught it. My daughter had been born, I don't know when she was born, but 2013 in the September. So that kind of put a bit of a spanner in the works. Not a spanner, but for fishing side.
You're digging yourself a hole.
Yeah,
mate.
I am.
I understand you do your groundwork.
Yeah, digging a big hole.
Yeah.
I need a price on this one. So it was a bit kind of, fishing was on massive backbone like it should be.
Yeah, of course.
And then the following spring, I was kind of trying to get out a bit, and I kind of waited like through April, which
because
sometimes,
frankly, if you're gonna not push it with the missus, you may as well wait until it's on.
Yes, yeah, definitely, yeah. And then I'd caught a couple other really nice mirrors. I think I've given you them as well. White Tips was a really ancient looking. I actually caught them. I had a mad day on a Sunday.
You might have to throw that one in afterwards, so I'm not sure if we have got. Have a little look. But
okay.
Yeah, carry on.
Yeah, there was like there you go. You got both.
Sorry, yeah, you're
so
right.
That's
that one.
They were both caught the same day. You can tell by the really crap work hat.
That hat's something
I've got
else, mate.
so much abuse. I don't know. They don't
Why?
look at the fish.
What?
I just went straight from work, and I don't know what it even is. I don't know where I got it.
It doesn't even look like a hat, mate. It looks like the knee of the knee section of a pair of joggers that have been cut out.
It did. In my defence, it had a peak in the front
it's
that's fallen out. Obviously, it was like an inch peak.
Yeah. Again, doesn't even look like you. I don't know who that man is, but he's caught.
Been eating too much, Aaron.
White.
That's White Tips, really old, lovely. I mean, that's just not by any means the biggest carp, but I think.
Who cares? It's got a vibe of those sort of older, longer mirrors that we don't see so many of nowadays.
No, definitely. There's always and obviously it was that area had a good stock and really old fish.
Well, you see a lot of the canal mirrors now that are in the likes of Englefield, not a million miles in terms of the way they look. From that
proportions and stuff.
Yeah.
So that was actually, I remember that clearly. This is one of them calls I put in. The Sunday morning, I'd woke up on the end of the lake, and they started showing to my right. There was another good angler, definitely, and I'd clocked him, and he'd clocked him, and he was kind of standing 90 degrees round the corner from me, looking at him. So I kind of he wasn't in that swim, so I quickly chest out, got the rod. And that was, I tied up a chod because it was weed in that zone. That one there, Toby, as well, that was the same day, which was called, it was called the Pretty Leany, that one.
Such a cool car.
I mean, again, I didn't get the other side. I don't know if I've given you that, but it was even better.
Yeah, I don't have another side.
It's an old ring. It's just a mega one, that, I think. But they were both. So the lad was stood in the swim. They were showing out in what was quite weedy. Didn't know like any particular spots on wraps or whatever you want to call it. Chod got tied up very quickly while the lad was stood in the swim, like trying to mark my territory. Chucked in the zone, single food bait, brown hook bait. Don't really do bright fluoro ones, just never have. Just always like me reds and me brown, like deep red fish meals and browns. he see this and then kind of come round, and obviously I'd mark. It was in between both of us. I was in the swim and I could just fish hard right, whereas he had to move and get in the swim because if he'd have done it first, I wouldn't have been able to. It was that kind of middle zone again. Yeah, caught white tips. He ended up moving into Pallets Bay, which was
sort of opposite.
No, sorry, further up the bank from me.
Okay, yeah.
So yeah, the fish was my right, but he ended up moving into Pallets Bay to my left. He must have found something there. Or something. He wouldn't have just moved in there. I caught the white tips chucking a chod to where they were. Just they're fishing. You put them out correctly. You can't even cock them up too much. Well, you probably can, but if you fish with them a bit, you know how to use them.
How do you sort of establish where that stop's going to be, and how do you feel them down, just out of interest?
That was a small lead, and I was getting a very subtle drop. They were going down. You know when you like hit weed high up in the water, you know it hasn't gone down. Just fishing the top bait on my lead core, not naked like a lot of people do. I still do all the chods this year. Been on lead core, top like long, like 6 foot, top bait high up, bottom one a good foot from the lead. Okay, they off.
So it's finding its own level, sort of between those beads.
Yeah, definitely. But you've got to have some serious conditions for them not to be fishing. I think the way I fish it. And I think I might have cast a couple of times. Obviously plugged up in weed.
Well, if you want him to see it as well.
yeah, probably that as well. Yeah, did it on purpose, honestly. But yeah, I ended up getting like some kind of subtle drop. One rod, caught that one an hour or so later. He shot up the pictures for me. And it wasn't easy binge by any means. It was a healthier stock than some places I fish, but still 40 carp, pressured carp. Was it 17 acres? I think they put it at. So not like tiny, but not big. And then re-chucked the rod again. Got a drop quite early. I remember that the next one. Hour later, I was calling him up again, like to do some more. And that was that Pretty Leany they called it, which was quite an odd, like a mega one. And then did it again, and an hour later had another one. This is on the Sunday. Normally I'm gone by like 10 in the morning. So the call was gone in that morning.
Yeah.
And again, because I don't use that card often, she swallowed it kind of thing. I had work on the Monday, but I proper pulled out the stops and said, right, I'm going to do the night, pack up at 4 in the morning and get to work. Because I basically gone from work on the Friday after working all day, probably stunk, drove to the lake. I don't know where the job I was working on was. This was when I was working for someone though, rather than for myself. Did the 2 nights, extended it to the 3rd night, Sunday night. I had to leave about 4 o'clock in the morning, straight back to work. You could, on a site, you could get swallowed up a bit more because it was more of you, whereas now it's 2 of us, it'd be a big tail kind of thing. Yeah. And they'd know it was me that stunk. But so caught another one an hour or so later. So I had 3 in that day, but then when you know it's done, and you know that they've probably moved, the shows had stopped, but you almost string out that night.
Yes.
The case, like FOMO, fear of missing out kind of thing. And you know it's done. You know you've just had 3 in a few hours. They've now stopped showing, maybe it's the time of day and all that. And you think, I'm still going to stay. I'm going to pack up at 4 in the morning, drive 120, well, I don't know where I was going, but to home it was 120 odd miles. It could have been further. It could have been fishing in working in Suffolk or something, but not that there's any problems with Suffolk. And then did the night, shot up to the shops later to get a bit of food because I always have enough food for the session, not like just ample food, just eat for the sake of it. And did the night, nothing else happened, but I'd had the 3.
Obviously nothing happened because you pulled the night. Yeah,
exactly, and that's a rarity to do that. And then so that was just a lot. That was opportunist fishing. That wasn't.
So because you can't. We just established it's tough to build to anything. If you're not local.
Yeah, and just I think if you're local on there at the time, there was so many people travelling from everywhere.
And the fish with the Brute was big. It
was big draw to go for. It was an old. It was unique, like we've said, because it's the shape of it, the colours of it. I don't think I've got the best pictures of it by any means, but it's. I caught it, and
I mean within that period, it feels like you had Sharpie, Oz, Stokesy, Phil Buckley, like a lot of lads in that sort of.
I think Nigel Sharp was must have pulled off the year I got on there.
Right.
He wasn't on there when I was on there, but
all within that sort of area because it was big. The fish.
Oh yeah. I mean, the other three you mentioned, like
Yeah.
Oz was on there when I was on there. He called it on the same moon the year before I called it. Phil Buckley was on there. Tom was the lad standing in the swim,
Right.
waiting to get into it, and then ended up Tom, will you do me a picture? Yeah, and then I say that picture there is the Brute. I think there's probably better shots, but
Who cares? It's your. This is
yeah,
your
yeah.
moment.
No,
This
I
is
mean
your
better
moment.
shots that I've got as
Yeah.
well. To be fair, I don't know what's. Yeah, I don't know. It's probably a very. Yeah,
Look at the head. How would you describe that head to someone who's never seen the Brute before?
Deformed. It's like it's got like a. I don't know. It's like a big forehead, like rolled over nose. I don't know. It's just another old wrinkly one, massive thick wrist. It's just got a really. I don't know. It's like its skull's not right, is it?
It's like it reminds me of one of those dinosaurs that used to crash their heads together as a means of fighting. You know, like do you know? Yeah.
I think there's a water shot, and I think it looks even worse. I mean, it looks bad enough but
worse in a great way.
Yeah. I mean, and that's kind of it is what it is. I knew that, and it's got a big single-ish scale in the middle of it.
It might even be a couple of big ones together there, mightn't it?
I think it actually tells
making one great big scale. Perhaps.
But yeah, its wrist, like its tail, looks a bit
huge, long fins.
Yeah, just unique, like grey, kind of old, just wicked carp.
I mean, it's a credit to the name of it because I'm not an angler, but I knew out of your collection that's what
that would be it.
Yeah, I mean, its tail, I think it used to drag on it was quite a greedy fish, in all honesty.
Is that what all those lesions are on the base of the
tail?
tail?
Yeah, I reckon that's where it used to drag a lot on the floor. But so that was.
I don't think there is Tobes. I think it's the same one twice or something.
Oh, is it? Okay.
There you go. There's a water shot. Basically,
it's the same. Yeah, you can see because its head looks a bit better picture that one, but.
The peck is so long, mate.
Yeah. I mean, I think they had. I'm sure one of them had like them kind of
lesions on it again.
Yeah,
a little
top of it, low of its tails, like whited out a little bit, which was always quite noticeable.
Because what was going to be quite a short little piece on the Brute has actually taken us an hour. I think we're going to move to what I think we haven't talked a lot about on this podcast before, like. One of the real amphitheatres of British carp fishing, that is Savay Lake.
Yep.
We're going to miss a lot in between. Sorry to everybody. We're going to miss stuff on St Ives. We're going to miss stuff on the North Met. Both lakes that deserve their own time, but in the interest of spending some time on a lake that we've never really discussed on this podcast, not more recently anyway. How on earth does someone who's been fishing these lakes decide, oh no, I'm going to go and fish what is a difficult lake to get into, a prestigious lake, a lake again that's not very close to home?
It was to kind of start with it was I don't know when I put my name down for the days. This is something I'm really good with dates and statistics and stuff like that, but I don't put my name down for a lot of lakes. I don't.
But if you're going to do one, right, Savay,
I mean, there's a lot of our old Combe Valley lakes we could probably all reel off that you've got to have your name down for 6, 7, 10 years. But either way, I somehow at some point put my name down the days, and kind of must have forgotten about it. And I was fishing the lake opposite Korda, and I was obviously there nights, and I think the year that I got on there, 2018, that year, I just, where was it? Oh, so I got home or whatever from work or whatever, and there was a letter to join the Days Syndicate, whatever it's called, kind of thing, for Savay. And to start with, in all honesty, I picked it up, saw the letter-headed paper, and I thought I was in like the rotor, like.
And you were like, "This surely it's not meant to be this easy."
And I was literally running around the house, bearing in mind, I'm at home with my missus and my daughter, and they're thinking I've completely lost the plot, even more than normal.
Have we won the lottery, love? And
yeah,
like,
type
well,
thing.
Actually,
yeah.
no.
And I was literally running round, and I hadn't even read it properly.
Yeah.
I think I read you are you've been accepted, or
Yes.
whatever the wordings were, that you can fish the day or the syndicate, whatever, which isn't the rota, or the rota system. And then I read it, but I was still like,
still Savay, right?
I've got the days, and I was like, I've got the energy in that to do days anyway. And I still think I'm getting worse as I'm getting older. Like, I just don't stop kind of thing. But I was like, oh mate, I've got Savay. I've got a Savay. I couldn't believe it. And then it's the days, and you start actually thinking it's 100 odd miles so 200 odd mile round trip. I think it's 6 till 9 in the evening. And yeah, so I was fishing the lake like 100 yards opposite the gate, like, and I've got nights on there.
So naturally you're thinking you're going to bounce them, or
yeah. I mean, it was kind of, so that was the first year I was on Korda. There's different rules. There's no lead core on Savay and things like that.
Annoying, right?
So I ended up, I was reeling in extra early on Korda through your bite time, and I was doing quite well on there.
To change kit. And a lot of the time when I went to Savay, obviously on the days you can't go around the cone bank. This was before HS2 was in, like, killing everywhere. You can only fish, bits of it. Like, there's still a lot of it, all the road bank, all round the shallows, and then all down the canal, like the north. What are your
bank.
first impressions of what is a lake that I haven't set foot on myself? So
yeah, it is everything, and everywhere I ran into someone that works here that
fishes it.
He fishes it, and he was very obliging and actually walked me. He was packing up, and as my first ever walk round, and I literally was walking around with a mat, probably a little backpack of 2 rods and a net. It was very light because all my gear was over, just set up on Korda opposite. And he was packing up, and he kind of walked me back round and introduced me to a lot of people, which was very, I think, helped massively. I never wanted to ask him to try to forward me for the syndicate, because he's probably got a lot of people in his case a lot of the time, because I'm sure anyone that works in the trade, they get tapped up for things.
Well, I think you end up knowing more anglers than perhaps a normal person would, and then come across in their everyday life. Maybe, I don't know. But
he was very accommodating and introduced me to people, which I think is just a massive help anyway. So I was walking it. I think I had the days for, so I had the days to start with, and then I ended up buying another setup because I got fed up of cutting lead core off and threading tubing on it, which took time, which meant half an hour reeled in extra on Korda. So I bought another setup, was going to Korda with 2 setups. If it was really on Korda, I wouldn't even walk round Savay. And then I started walking it. There was no stockies in, late. There's a few stockings been in since, but there was just the older ones then. I had one opportunity which I'll forever kick myself about, but it is what it is, just missed opportunity really, potentially anyway. And yes, I was on Savay walking around it. There is a very weird, not weird, but like an atmosphere that I think St Ives had it, Pingewood had it. I know it's the old ones, and they're big, and the history, like they're a bit historical, whatever. And I fished other ones as well, and Savay, and it just had this aura about it, and it was everything. Like, it's the snags and the trees. It's just not like manicured at all. Obviously, was it 70 acres or something? I think it's quoted out. I think the history of it, we've all seen books of it. There's been enough written about it. Just everything. It was a very ahead of its time, early, like one of the first waters, wasn't it? It was and it's still got, for me, enough. I know it's not what it was stock wise, but it's still got enough and some for me.
Those layers of interest are really important to me, as well. With all due respect to St Ives and Pinge, like the Savay's right up there.
Oh yeah.
I think only Redmire really above it has more history, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I think the other one's just the actual, not maybe the history that Savay's got, but just this feeling when you're on there.
It comes with that in
quite weird, like, it's hard to describe, but it's there. And I've known people that have talked about places, and you think, really? And then you got to go there, and you think, yeah, really, this is the real deal. It's got everything. It's got big, vast, like open bits of water. It's got close up. It's got snags. It's got the islands. It's, you know, it's just got everything. The lads are all very, you know, sound. You know, most places are. I think there's always
they come with, you know, maybe in your head you're thinking, I'm a second class citizen here, but in reality,
I think on the days, I think you think that, and I think you're meant to think that as well. You are not worthy type thing. But yeah, it fitted in really well with the whole, like you said, like how'd you go about travelling on the days kind of thing, because I had the base opposite, and then you can, a lot of the time I was just looking for opportunity and showing face type thing.
Which is really important. Like if you're going to invest in trying to get a ticket, you have to...
Yeah, you can't just buy a ticket and not go there. Yeah, I think so as well. So yeah, but in the end, I stopped. Korda had a really special one I wanted to catch. You know, I was fishing against the clock because HS2 were going through the valley, ruining it. But Korda was BCSG got compensation for the lake and the land. And there was a date. I think it was the 17th of November 2019. I don't think it's 100%, but that was when I had to be off.
Yeah.
I think it was a bit of a free for all the following year in the end because it was up in arms. No one really technically owned it, but and I thought, I want to catch this carp. I've been fishing it for a year. The Savay tickets come up, which is amazing, but I need to catch the one in Korda. I really want that, and I think it's as special a carp. It's one of my favourites.
We're going to put a picture up anyway because we can't miss this one entirely. But
yeah, so I ended up stop fishing really very rarely. I might take the odd walk over there in the afternoon if I went to the shops again just to have a look because it was such a wicked place. But I ended up stop going over on the days because I couldn't do both, and I was losing bite times and fishing time on Korda, which had a deadline.
Yes, of course. Yeah, totally understand.
And I ended up driving there midweek and all that baiting because it was dead quiet. It was neglected because I think a lot of people had pulled off because they knew it was coming to an end, which I loved. There was a few lads on there, and they were good lads as well, to be fair. Nice, good lads. And then I caught that one a month before the deadline. But I had a ticket start in Cambridge that was some really old ones, another publicity shy venue, but mega ones, low stock. And I was like, cool. And then Savay become a bit, I've got to drive there with no base to do nights. Or, you know, I could probably sleep in the van somewhere or find another lake kind of thing. But then you're still compromising your fishing because it's hard to juggle 2 days and nights, different venues. I know people have done it and they've been successful, but
that's really, really hard, man. I mean, that's as hard as more. Tough to put yourself through more than that if you're trying to swing days, and because days is tough. Right? If you're fishing days properly, that's hard work, isn't it?
And yeah, I've got the energy to do it, but I think with this other ticket in my hand, and they're like a dying breed, and I've finished there now, but some of them are gone while I was on there, and so I then, when I should have gone back to Savay, I started fishing this Cambridge lake, got mega into that, and then I did do some trips, just drove to Savay for the day. Didn't do loads, I wouldn't say, not hardly any fishing, just pretty much walking, but with the intent, obviously, always had the rods there.
If you found them, you'd fish,
yeah, because that's generally what it is. You've got to fit round the people doing the nights there, so that rules out some swims. You can't go around half of the lake on the days anyway. But yeah, so anyway, the following year, I just got back off holiday, and I remember it again. This is another weird one, but I was in the local Chinese because we got a holiday. There was no food in the house or whatever. Couldn't want to cook. Got a Chinese, and I was stood in there waiting for it. And the phone rang with a number. I have a lot of mobiles ring me for work until I've saved them, obviously, with a client or whatever. So I answered it, and he was like, "Hello, it's Tom Banks here." And I was like, thinking it's like Luke or someone taking the mic, being a div kind of thing. So I was like, "Hiya," like kept it like correct kind of thing, I'd say. And he said, your name's come up for Savay. Now I've already got the day, so now I know it's the syndicate kind of thing.
Mm.
And he was, he's a nice chap, Tom is. And he obviously wanted to play a little game with me though. And he was going through things, and I'm like, the Chinese is trying to like, it's ready. And I'm just walked out the front of the shop. I'm like on the phone. I don't care about your Chinese, your prawn crackers and go soft kind of thing. And so I'm in court and conversation with him, and he said, who do you know on Savay? And I think I don't want to just name drop certain people that everyone knows, but that's someone I've known for longer than the Savay lot as such, because he's local to me. And I said his name, and he was like, for a recommendation, he said, do you know? And he went, nope, it's not him. And I was like, there was like a bit of a silence. And I'm thinking, he's obviously messing with me massively. And this is something I'd normally do, and I'm not on the other end of it, but I'm on the phone to him. So I'm like, and another guy I know on there a bit, I only know his nickname. And I'm good with dates and fish names and knowing what fish lives where, but people's names I'm quite bad at sometimes. So I've said, such and he's kind of like stalling. I think he knew what I was talking about. And then he went, nope, not him either. And I'm thinking, oh, mate, it's disastrous, isn't it? I've named two people, and neither of them are who. And I'm like, I think I've then said, oh, I'm really sorry. I can't remember the exact words, but I was like, I've just got back off holiday. I'm going to try. I don't really know. And he went, it doesn't matter anyway, Lee. You've got a ticket.
Right, amazing.
And I'm just like a bit of breath kind of thing. And then he got chatting. It all went, and I couldn't believe it, to be quite honest. And then I've said, just out of interest, who nominated me or forwarded me or whatever it was. And he told me, and I'd met the chap a few times, and like lovely bloke kind of thing. Been on there, I think, quite a long time, but I was still quite forever grateful. And I don't know if he wouldn't have said I'd have never got the ticket or what. I don't know if it was kind of like some kind of meeting type thing where they all said who they thought might be good for a ticket. And I did thank him when I see him. I did want to cuddle him, I think, and say thank you very much. So he got me the ticket. Oh, he said my name. I think it was although it is a long way, and in one of them places that some people might not put their name down for because they just think it's not coming up ever. I think as bad as HS2 is, I think obviously with Savay, I think when you get the ticket, if you drop, you never get back in. That's like one of the unwritten rules. So I think a lot of the lads that have been there for a long time have seen it.
Of course, they've had it in the absolute peak, haven't they?
I don't know it for much different to what it is, because that's my type. I know I've read the books and blah, 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 but that's how I knew it. But HS2 wasn't in force, and you could go around the North Bay when I was on the days, but then by the time I got the night ticket, like Korda had then gone. It's like a building site. It's absolute criminal, in my opinion. I know money talks, and it was always going to go ahead to some extent or whatever, but that's just another story. But I think because of the HS2, there was more of a turnover this year and maybe the year before with members, because they didn't want to see
they're heartbroken probably.
Yeah, and rightly so. I mean, it's like the North Bay is completely out of you can't go in there at all to fish. You have to walk around a bit of it, but like the car park's all gone, there's trees been napalmed. But once you get on the lake still, if you look on the horizon, you can see cranes and things like that. But it is, the fish are still, what's left is still there. And it's still wicked. And when you're set up there, it's still weird. It is still the same.
I mean, to round us up, we need to talk about a couple of fish that you've caught, really, because they're so sensational, really, that that they deserve, to.
Yeah, it's like I say, there is still some of the old ones in there, and I think probably more like.
It's a lake that doesn't, where the fish can go missing, isn't it, as well?
Like there is
mystery to it and stuff.
Yeah, there is. because of, even when you had full access to the perimeter of the lake, there's still like the Cottage Bay far side is a long chuck. There's islands you can't get behind Pete's Island. There's a lot of like out of range work. If they wanted to, they could stay there, kind of thing. And I think fish, I've always gone missing there anyway. I've been a bit difficult. There's obviously fish lost because of the nature. It is a beast of a lake. There is, it is unreal. Like the bars, the drop offs, the snags, just everything. It's weedy at times. It's there's still a lot in there. And a lot of the old members have still said it's not dead. It's just on the missing list because it might turn up. There's a few mirrors, a few fish that have only been caught a few times, and they've been like 7 and 11 years to capture or something. Like this is like from them, not from my research, to be fair. But and they just turn up, and you don't fish for them. You fish Savay, fishing Savay, and if one turns up, like wow, kind of thing. But it's not. I think recently as well, it's done fish that they didn't think was there anymore. And
which is so exciting, isn't it? Must be for you.
And you know what is there that gets caught like once a year or something like that. So you know they're there generally. But what else just turns up? What was there that I knew of is more than enough, and it being Savay, and it is everything. But yeah, when ones turn up that technically you don't even know of, it's not an uncaught carp. Obviously, it's been caught before and blah blah blah. But it's as good as you can get, I think, personally.
Absolutely. In terms of your first fish, that was a pretty special.
Yeah, that was I did a trip. I lost one in the July when my other Cambridge lake was shut for spawning, and then I went back to Cambridge because I wanted to get that ticked off and catch them so I could concentrate just on Savay. Obviously, Savay being a rotor is always a bit harder because if you fish 1 week, you then can't go the next week until I think it goes open in November, and then which is still a good time, very good time. And so the next trip, whenever I'd finished up on my Cambridge water, I'd caught that one on the Sunday morning with a little bonus call. Actually, that was a 2 hours extra, and then I caught the one I wanted, and then the following weekend, I was going to Savay. Like, I wanted to go, but I also wanted to finish Cambridge Lake. So it was just, you can't do both at once. So anyway, I shot down then. It was on a full moon. Walked around for quite a long time. It was like daylight that night because it was so bright. It was big sheets of water. It was quite flat calm. Chatted to one member for probably a lot longer into darkness, and there was no rush because it was dark. And I didn't see them. I just went in somewhere on a bit of a hunch kind of thing and just led it up and marked and everything like it was daylight. It was, and I was really calm with it. There was no rush. It was just, got the rods out, nice area, this side of kind of like a bar, I think, or a raised area. Again, a nice, real silty, nice glide pull. Spommed some bait out because it was like obviously well out of catapulting range and stuff. Didn't see him out. It was a nice area in a good spot. That kind of area's got some, I know, has got some good form as well in that kind of time of year. I was on a massive high from the week previous, and like the next morning the rod tips were like smashed right under up to the butt eye because of the undertow and everything else. And it was literally the rod lifted off the buzzer and it held in the butt grip, but it lifted up and it was just melt. And the clutches weren't tight. They weren't like locked. There's no need to be. They were out in open water. And the rod just picked up, and I picked up the rod, and it was like one of them scary moments, like the match bit fish, which just, you almost don't want to try, and there's no reason to clamp down on it, so just let it go. And it peeled some line off me, and I was just thinking, when is this going to stop? And then slowly started reeling it back, and it rolled about 70-ish yards out, and it moved a lot of water. It was like 9 in the morning. It was still flat calm, to be fair. And I just kept winding it in. It's one that it's the big mirror in there. It's it's a wicked one. It's one that you want to catch, kind of thing.
Is it that one there?
Yeah, that one there. And yeah, I netted it on my own, obviously. And I thought, I've just seen like a low 40 the week before. You know, you're eyeing a bit with weights and stuff like that. So I know what that is. And I'm like, it's in the net. There's another guy up the track, probably 200 yards in the next nearest swim or whatever it is. And I went through this like a WhatsApp group they've got for my rotor on Toads. And I knew he was up the back. I didn't have his number, but he was in the WhatsApp thing. So I scrolled through, found his profile picture, whatever, rang him. And I was just like, yeah, I look quite happy there, didn't I? I rang him and said, I think I've got the double roll in. And he's diving. And he just went, what do you mean? You don't think you got the double roll in? Is it massive? I went, yeah. He went, is it got loads of scales on it? And I went, yeah. He went, well, it's the double roll in, you proud, or word to that effect. And he went, I'll be up in a minute.
Yeah.
And literally, yeah, like a few other lads came round as well. He called a few of them, obviously, or whatever, and said, like, Lee has got the double roll in, and I think it's generally like once. I think it's quite a rare. I think it's like once a year jobby. There's a few guys on there, I think, that have been on there for years that want that one kind of thing. And it was like 49.4, 49.6, so it's massive. Like anywhere, it's an old one, like it's mega tail on it, scales on it, massive gob,
Tremendous carp.
I just like everything there. I mean, it doesn't even look that big there, thinking about it, but like there's like nice reddy purple at the front kind of thing. And at the back end, it was all kind of a bit wrinkly. I think maybe the other side shows it.
Really round tail.
Yeah, really. The tail is, it's hard, it's obviously a podcast, but the edges of its tail, you can see they're actually burred and curved. They're
folded in. Yeah.
You can see it on the bottom line, but it looks like a defining line.
Like
Yeah, like a scoop. And I think some of its pecs were like it. When I've caught a few others since that have, not all of them, but some of them have had that effect. So yeah, that was first fish from Savay. Was like how she, like landed. So I'd lost one in the previous. There's only my second session on there, and there was a very there's something else with that capture that I've never really talked about, but a friend that passed away, I had been asked to spread some ashes on the lake, and I kind of spoke to people and they said it's okay, there's probably lots of ashes on there. And that's really weird that kind of, I was doing it that morning, I was going to ring his wife and do a little weird, kind of bit strange, but a bit like speech and record it. Yeah. And I said I was going to do it at 11:11 because there's a number of aims, and I see these numbers a lot, and I don't clock watch a lot. And my watch actually stopped on my birthday a few days ago, and I just wear it even though actually the battery's dead in it for the last 3 days. But yeah, 11:11, 2:22, like them numbers I see far too much. So I was going to ring her, because apparently it's 11:11 is the number of the angels, I think they call it. So I was going to ring her at 11:11 and do it, but I still had everyone in my swim, so I couldn't do it. And it's just, I don't know, it's maybe I'm thinking into it too much, but it's weird that I had that one, not at 11:11, but that morning rolled in through that by the time we'd done pictures and everyone had gone. And yeah, later on I did that little video for her, and spread a few ashes, which was quite just another weird moment to that day, because it was such a, like, one of my favourite, again, some of the other ones I've caught, like cluster and that. But yeah, it's definitely a wicked carp. And then kind of, that was the first capture, and that was, well, we're talking 11th or 12th of October. 10th or 11th of October that was. And then I was then kind of freed up in Cambridge. I then couldn't get out for, like, because it's a week on, a week off still, I couldn't get out for the next couple of rotors. So it was into November, and I kind of did a trip. I think I did 5 nights through November, like I was flat out work still, and I did a single night and then two nighters at the weekend. I had a few others and got lucky with a couple of other, I think there's one picture of a common with the scales smudged, which was a really nice, that one, kind of lights going a bit, or actually it's early morning that is, but yeah, like I think again it's
Great shape.
Peck was split, unfortunately, like, not from me, but that little smudge of scales and the colours of it, lovely mouth, little stumpy tail. I think that was 28, that one. Again, doesn't matter there, does it?
No,
from
not
there.
At all. Not at all.
God knows how old it is or whatever, but it's just, I think that's amazing, Colin, the colours of it. And, and then leading on to recently, to be fair, so what happened? So that was last November, and then I think I then couldn't get out anywhere. I was over the Christmas period. I still normally work slows down. I can get out a bit. I think there was a 5-week period where I didn't go. Take my daughter to London to see the Christmas lights. I was busy at work in the week, just shopping for Christmas. Things like that. I didn't go fishing for 5 weeks, which is for me unheard of. Like 5 weeks without going. It is what it is, and I'd done enough, and I'd had a massive good year and stuff.
I think they're getting ready for Christmas upstairs by the moment. Like we've got
it's not my stomach rumbling.
Yeah.
So your gym weights getting ready to.
That's it. Yeah.
I missed that one. But yeah, so I ended up. Then after having a few in November, and I felt like I was going in one swim and fishing range and catching a few and putting a bit of bait in whilst fishing, kind of thing. I felt like, this is going really well, and then couldn't get out for 5 weeks, which led me into January. And I did go back, and there was nothing really visually happening.
Tough time to go back to any lake, isn't it?
Yeah. So I did drop back in there, and it was kind of nothing happened. It doesn't mean it's done, but it's just you ain't going to catch them every trip. I've been lucky with catching quite a few, and a couple of the old ones. There's another common as well I caught, and then I had. Where did I go after that? I had another ticket. I had season before that season. Another publicity shy water, but I ended up, because Savay was shut for in the spring, traditional close, and then a week on, a week off, I got into this other syndicate that I joined and had a really good year, and then I just couldn't pull myself away from it, and I kind of missed the start of Savay, and I think I did one single night. I drove down for a single night, and that's all I had, and I thought, I just want to go to, I was missing it, so I went there and did a single night, and then dropped back on the syndicate because I've had a really good year on there. Like I say, like PB Common this year, I've had for like 15 years since the Snake Pit one. So that was a really nice fish. And then went back to Savay. And I was doing 2 nights, like trying to do every rota, but I missed a couple again. So then you're not there for a month. So you're fishing off the cuff a lot of the time. When I'm only doing that, you're not in tune with it as much. But I had really good hit in the shallows. I did a 2 night and I had like 5 bites and landed 4.
Amazing.
All like younger fish, and then so I was buzzing. I was on a roll. It was just, I don't know, just when things are going well, if often people say about it, you just can't put a foot wrong. And it just seemed like it was going on from last year. Like not every session, but if you can catch a couple of your ones in a year, that's more than if I can catch one good in a year.
And to sign it off the way that you did this year.
Yeah, and then literally got back on there, did another couple of trips. I think I had like 5 in another trip. A lot of these are younger fish now that have gone in, and I was catching younger ones. And then the final trip, my last trip, a few weeks back, I've been catching quite a few stockies from this snag area, and I don't know, in my head, I know the old ones get caught from there. But I was like, I'm going to go and try another area because I'm just catching a lot of these younger fish. And they are, Toby had one up a minute ago, they are nice, but they're not, like they are wicked and they will be amazing, but they're not them old ones still yet.
No,
they've got to start
as anglers
somewhere.
We are selfish to a degree, aren't we? We want to catch those first, really.
So I did a night in another area, fishing quite long, didn't have a finger still on, spotting bait, absolutely fried my finger. Like I was casting with my big finger rather than my index finger because it hurt that much, which I've never experienced, probably from being a bit harder from work and stuff. And I blanked for the night, and I was like, I'll just go around the other side where you've been catching. Why are you not, they get caught from there. So I went round there, it was free. It's snag fishing again, but it's quite easy because it's short range. You can catapult baits or spom it, whatever if you want, or over the trees. So I've put some bait out first, Went and checked the snags. There was a few in there that I could see. I was like, right. I didn't even look what was in there. I see a few, and I was like, there's probably always fish in there. Got the rod, 2 rods on the zone. Not near the snag. This is probably I say snag fishing. I'll keep it away because they can kite to it, and you've got no real angle on them. So I've always fished quite a way away from the snags because I want to land them. And I have had the odd one that's I've had to clamp down it, probably younger fish. I've had a hook pull, probably soft mouth and stuff. So anyway, I've got the rods out, and it's part of it. But that morning when I was in the other swim, my brolly got blew out at 7 a.m. The swim, it hadn't stopped raining. My bed sheet was soaked. I was dragging it out like my Pioneer that's prehistoric, but I love it. At the brambles kind of thing. Hadn't ripped it. Then I moved, and it was in them big winds, probably 3 weeks or so ago, like the previous storm, tail end of it, whatever. As I moved around to the cone bank, through flooded, like the path's flooded. There's a tree gone down across the path, and I can't get through. So I've ended up getting savage angry with it, and just like some of them were too thick and bend to snap. I end up having to snap everything. I had no saw with me. It's about a mile walk back to the van. I've just got savage with this tree that's gone right across the path. Couldn't get, even if I unloaded the barrier, you couldn't get through. So I've smashed this tree a bit. I'm covered in like mossy green stuff. I'm knackered. I've got to the swim. I'm just like, mate, I've had my brolly ripped out. I've blanked for the night. It is what it is. And this tree down, got the rods out, sat back. I don't know, 2 or 3 hours later, the rod's gone. Picked up into it, started to crank. My tournament I've had for years. Handle snapped. So I'm fishing like downish towards snags. The handle snapped, and I thought it just folded over. But like in the moment, that's what I thought. But then I'm like, the handle's in this hand and the rod's in this hand, and they're not attached. And there's like a stump like sticking out 10 mil.
What did you do?
Oh mate, I started because I know it's going to go to the snags. Yeah. So I've just smashed the rod tip under, and they're big snags as well. And I've just rotoring round the bail arm, and I'm I've done it for a bit, and I'm thinking, I'm getting like what 3 inches on a turn of the spool. I'm like, this is absolutely suicide. What am I going to do, kind of thing. So I've got 2 other rods out, one in the zone and one just out in the lake, and I've on a hump or whatever. So I flicked the cap off one of them to take the handle off. I've had tournaments forever, and I've never taken a handle off. And there's under the cap, there's actually you need a screwdriver to take it off. Yeah. Take it off. And I'm like, so I put the rod down on the floor because that's all I can do. I've gone and found my teaspoon that I've managed to it's fitting in there quite well actually. Undone the handle with a rod that's fishing, not the other snag one, the one out in the lake. I thought there's a bit of grace on that. And then I've screwed it in. I've got the handle back in. I've picked up the rod. It's solid in snags. I'm like, as you'd expect. And I'm just thinking, everything has gone wrong. I've had bivvies ripped out, trees down, handles now snapped. What is going on? Fish snagged up. So I've put the rod back down. I'm having a bit of a hissy fit right now. I'm like kicking around the swim. It's all like black, thick silt over there as well. It's quite known for it. I picked the rod back up, and it's just come out. I'm just like, what is going on? And it's just kiting away from the snags. I mean, I think this feels all right kind of thing. It doesn't feel like a stocky, all erratic. Not that you're ever going to know what's what until you never know what you lose. We all think we do, but. And then I've played it in, and I've seen it's a common or a good one, and I've like netted it. I know a few of the other fish in there, and it's one called the lump of leg common, and like an old wicked one. I know it's like mid. No, it's not that one.
Is it not that one?
No, it's
There's 2 toes on that.
It's another one. It's got a bit of a clipped. Not that one.
That
one.
That one.
Yeah. So I've netted it, and I'm like, all I wanted was one like old one this year. That is, if I can have one old one out there a year, that is enough. Yeah, the picture I've probably got.
Do you know when it dates back to?
I'm not 100%. It's weird because I look into everything normally, but with Savay, I just know it's like the even the Claremont stock. I think was 88, and obviously they weren't young fish, were they? From another lake technically. It was pretty much overpopulated, I think, wasn't it? And they were moving them then, and so they weren't like almost young fish in '88, and that was the last. '88, I might stand corrected, but I think '88 was the last stocking until the recent ones, which obviously that's not one of them. So
yeah, it's either '88 or
prior, yeah. And if it's '88, it's still like not a new penny then kind of thing. So so I've got that one in the net, absolutely buzzing. Like, forgot all the other antics, the reel handle stuff, just everything. Forgot it all. I'm like, that's it. It's the lumper lead common, absolutely buzzing. Like, whittled tail, just wicked. Like, just everything about it. And it's an old one. Like, it's pecked. I think you can see on the front peck of that. It's again got that bird over, like, scalloped kind of edge to it, which must be from rubbing the bottom or something, maybe.
Who knows? Yeah.
So I've got that one in the net. And I've always, not through that much confidence, but I've always got a second net. Because if I get one, I generally stake them out in the net. I don't take them out to transfer them. Set the other net up, and this other chap, another member, has walked past. And I bear in mind, I've only moved in there. He was walking past the swim to go to the shops or wherever he went for an hour or so, whatever, or home, wherever he went. And I've only just setting up, and he's come back, and I've got one in the net. And I said, it's this one, blah, blah, blah. And he said, right, I'm just going to walk up to my swim, drop my supplies down, and I'll come back. So I've got one rod out, still down that zone, and he's walked off, and 2 minutes later, the other rod's busted off. And I was like, result, it just kited away from the snags. I know that one went in there initially, but that's when I've got like no reel handle, drill it in. So I'm playing it, and I'm kind of like, there's no pressure. Normally it's a bit of you crank to start to get them clear of the snags. But this one's kiting away, and it feels a good one again. And I'm like, wow, kind of thing. And then he's walked back into the swim, and he's like,
is this a joke?
What are you doing? And I'm like, I've got enough on ice, it feels good, kind of thing. And then he just kited right, and it rolled, not like they do, they take that gulp of air, and I see it, and I was like, that's another common, that's bigger, that looked big. And then he said, do you want me to net? I said, yeah, please. So it's better out if I walk back a bit. And so it didn't do loads, it just back one, Toby, that one, yeah. So it's we've netted it. We both stood there. Know that the other one's the lumper lead's 30. It weighed 35 something, but we know it's 35 to 38 generally. And this one's rolled in the net. Like another, I've been told some stories about this one from an old member. It's an odd, apparently really rare one. I don't. No disrespect, it doesn't matter if it got caught 10 times a year. I mean, it's just, its mouth was immaculate. It's got that little flat lobe to its tail, but that was, so we got the other one out. Weighed that one 35.4, 35.6, whatever. Like, not being blasé with that. Put it back, and I'm like, I've got an even bigger one here, kind of thing. So we've got it out, and then it was very wide. And 1 minute we're looking at it thinking, it looks massive. And then we're like, it doesn't look that, like the side profile doesn't look that big, and we're both like, well, it's bigger than that one, and we weighed it, and it was £40.2 or £40.4. I don't know why I've gone bad with numbers. It was £40 something, and I'm like, it's my second Savay, like, absolute unit kind of thing,
and a common,
like, and it's just like they're both like literally back to back, and then the chap actually, like, say, diamond kind of thing, let me have my moment, shared it with me. He walked off, and before he walked off, he said, give me number if you have one in the night or sort of that kind of thing, give us your hand and that. I said, yeah, and he's a lovely bloke and that as well. And he walked off, and I think about 2 hours, like, I got the rods back out, and 2, maybe 3 hours later, and I'd only been in the swim since that morning. I had another one, which I think you put up and then go, Toby.
Is that the final one?
Yeah.
This one?
Yeah, this one. I actually really, I don't know, there's something about them. They're all, I think, wicked. Its tail doesn't even do it justice. The mouth was mint again, but the tail on this one, Don't know, they're all wicked, but
As if you've had 3 big commons on the
yeah,
barrels.
that one was like 32, a bit deeper, a bit guttier. That one maybe. Yeah, so I've had like 3 old like Savay relics kind of thing in after moving, and yeah, just I know everything going wrong. It went very, very, very like 30. That was 32, yeah, 35 and 40, and then I lost one that evening, which kited away from the snags as well and burnt me, to be fair, which is, I don't know. Again, I'd never know what it was. And I was just fishing 2, I'd have been fishing 2 rods, and yeah, that snagged me up. So at the time, I had 1 rod that snagged with this fish. I got the rig and that back, but I lost the fish, obviously. I've then got one that I can't use because it's got a snap reel handle, and I didn't have. Oh, and that one I've just caught. No, yes, I'd have had 1 rod out, and I've been known on somewhere else to the marker rod comes out now and then, kind of thing. But it's obviously floating braid in it, so I've spooled up a load of mono, threaded up, or went to thread up some tubing, and it just weren't going through because it was wet. So I bid it down and down and down until I had no tubing left. Couldn't find packets and packets that I've got of it somewhere. So I ended up just fishing mono naked with blobs of putty every 4 inches because I needed to get the rod out. On my marker rod, it's a fishing rod, and it's a different rod. It's actually probably quite a good rod, and I had a bite on that the next morning as well, and that was stocky, that one. But yeah, it was. I lost that one. So no, so I lost 2 and had them 3, but in half a day after moving, after the carnage, them 3 commons, just like I then went on holiday on the next rotor, and it's now open, but I haven't been managed to get back yet. But that session, I don't think them 3 commons. Savay's been kind to me already with the first mirror, the first one I caught being that mirror, and then them 3 commons. So yeah, it's definitely, it'll just be an ongoing thing, Savay.
Of course, and listen, we wish you many, many more relics to come. Hopefully there'll be some more before they pass on. It looks like the future's very secure there as well.
I think Tom obviously knows what he's doing, and
of course he does.
They're hopefully fingers crossed.
No, and listen, Lee, thank you so much for coming in and sharing.
All right, thanks for
what's
having me.
been a long journey, I guess, from Essex all the way across and back again several times. But thank you so much. It's been lovely to hear about your fishing, mate.
Lovely. Cheers. Thank you.
The Thinking Tackle Podcast.